Let's get sweaty.
And welcome to a brand new season of the Shenmue Dojo Show. This is season 6. Can you believe that? Within this season, we want to go back to some hard-hitting topics filled with lore and jam-packed with information. So we're going to start off episode 1 with a bang with a huge interview that was conducted with some of the original Shenmue developers 25 years later. This was, of course, translated and published on PhantomRiverstone.com in 6 parts, so we have a lot to get through, and we probably expect it to take a few shows, so strap in, folks. But first, let's get the star of the show on. It's Matthew Oliver. Matt, how's life treating you?
Star of the show. Of all the anecdotes you've used, that is not one that has been used before. I'm still doesn't know if that sits comfortably or not, but no, I'm good, man. It's I can't believe we're recording this in the middle of January, and it's already in the middle of January. Christmas has been and gone. New Year's been and gone. Absolute bedlam everywhere at the moment. Work's insane. We've got Ofsted in. I was saying to you about off air. So it means that it's all hands to the deck at the moment. It's mad. Videos for the site, everything for the site. It's just been kicking off behind the scenes. I haven't played anything properly for probably about a month. But yeah, all good. You?
Yeah, not too bad, man. Yeah, like I say, you've been knocking the videos out the park, to be honest. So I don't know where you get the time to do any of what you do, to be honest. Especially like around family and your newborn child. Obviously, that you became a dad last year, middle of the year last year. So I mean, it's been a crazy whirlwind since then. And I feel like every episode of the new season, we start off by saying, like, we can't believe, like, Christmas is gone, the New Year's been and gone, and we're already, like, 2 weeks through it. And by the time the show airs, like, potentially February. So it's like, it is just, time flies by so fast, and got to sort of savor every moment of it. So for me, I actually went back to England at the start of the year, and if anyone's seen some of the recent videos, especially the end of year and the 2026 expectations videos, you've probably seen that I actually visited you, Matt. So that was fun. Had a really good day with you, eating sandwiches and whatever we did on the day.
Eating sandwiches and talking Shenmue is all you want.
Yeah, exactly. Sounds like a good day to me. Yeah, whilst I was in England, I sort of went back to my parents and we stayed there for a week. Kind of had the Christmas that we didn't actually have in Japan, because obviously Christmas Day arrives, Japan doesn't really celebrate Christmas, so it's a little different than what we're used to in England. But we ended up going to Disneyland actually on Christmas Day.
Oh yes.
So that was actually a really good day, apart from it being super busy. It was like crazy overcrowded. We waited 200 minutes just to go on the Frozen ride. So we sort of bit the bullet and paid for some fast passes for some of the other rides in there, and they give you like a free fast pass as well. So we ended up doing like 4 or 5 different rides actually. So it was a nice day, and then there was a Santa parade. So my daughter got to see Santa, Japanese Santa dancing around, and so it was a nice day actually. And it did rain actually at the end, so it spoiled the final parade, which got cancelled. It's a shame, but other than that, the weather's been absolutely incredible in Japan. Actually, it doesn't really feel like winter.
No.
Like actually, today it's been 17 degrees, which
wow, okay,
yeah, it's just I've asked a few people, like, is this normal? And people are just saying like, no, it's supposed to go cold again next week. So I think it's just an anomaly, if that's the right word. Anomaly.
Yeah.
But yeah, we had Christmas dinner with my parents on New Year's Day, so that was kind of a taste of Christmas, literally. Pardon the pun, taste of Christmas. And I had some mince pies, which I'd been missing. But other than that, I actually hadn't really been missing much of England. Just family and dogs. So back in Japan now, and raring to go again. I've already done dozens of lessons over here since. I was just telling you off air, Matt, that like I've almost done 300 lessons.
Mad, isn't it?
Since I started work over here, so that just sort of shows you the whirlwind it's been for me as well, trying to adapt to Japanese life. But picked up a Switch, actually, Switch 2 while I was in the UK.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, so I have been playing a little bit of games on and off, more so than last year, really. I barely played anything from memory last year, but they're still very difficult to find in Japan, like still sold out, which is mind-blowing. Yeah. So I managed to pick one up pretty straightforward in England, just literally walked into a Smith's Toys and the guy grabbed one off the shelf, and then I came back to Japan and just bought a Japanese plug, and it just charges, works absolutely fine. So I don't know if anyone is in the same position waiting for a Japanese Switch, but just get someone from England to ship you one, because it just
it like, sounds a lot easier.
Yeah, it does sound a lot easier. So been playing a little bit of Mario Kart that was bundled with it. Donkey Kong I bought, which is actually quite fun. Yeah,
love that game. Fantastic game, actually.
Tears of the Kingdom, which I'm only giving another go because of Casey's high praise for that game and that series. Like, I'd never really got into Zelda, and actually I didn't really enjoy Breath of the Wild.
I struggled with Breath of the Wild, if I'm honest. Yeah. Like, perfectly well-made game, just didn't resonate with me.
Same here, but so far I guess it's okay. So far, I guess it's one of those games that once it clicks, maybe I'll stick it through and maybe become a fan. I'm not sure. It's hard to tell with me if it's still my sort of Sega bias at the back of my head that's putting me off playing some of these games.
yeah, fair.
And the other game I've been playing is Pac-Man Repack 2, which
very good.
It is actually really good. I feel like it's a little bit clunky to play, but with the Sonic DLC, it does turn it into a fun game. So there's like gacha machines that have Sonic figures in that you collect coins, and then you can use these coins and get Sonic figures, which is pretty cool. There's arcade machines in this arcade, so you can play like the original Pac-Man games as you unlock them. And part of the Sonic DLC is there's like a new map. I don't know how many stages there is, but they take in stages from each, kind of like Sonic Generations. So there's like Green Hill, and then it's like another stage from Sonic Generations, and then it looks like there's maybe 3 or 4 at least stages, and then it almost feels like Sonic Generations, but you're playing as Pac-Man, which is interesting.
Because they lined this up with Crossworlds, didn't they? Because Pac-Man got a DLC for that at around the same time of that release. Is that about right?
Yeah, so it's like some strange collab they've done. I mean, Repack 2, this Pac-Man game, is like a remake of an old game. So for them to then add this new content as well is, I guess, unusual for a remake, but it's a lot of fun, actually. And you've got the Sonic music, and Pac-Man's in a Sonic costume that you can wear in the actual game as well, and he's got a spin dash, so it feels actually really good. I would recommend it, and I think it's quite cheap, actually. It's not too expensive, that game.
Brilliant.
But yeah, other than that, just been working on some vlogs. Just released my 5th Japanese vlog, Gym in Japan, which was in Yokosuka. So definitely recommend checking that out, because that was like an hour of walking and talking with Switch and another Shenmue fan called Codename. And we ended up going along Dobuita Street. We went to both of the naval harbours, the Japanese side and the US side, and some of the surrounding suburban area of like kind of Sakuraoka feel. And in fact, at the end of the vlog, kind of a spoiler, we actually found a park that literally was called Sakuraoka Park.
Oh, brilliant.
In Yokosuka, so maybe it could have been the original inspiration. Been enjoying that. So if you were interested in that, definitely check out my vlog series. It's not on the dojo, but it's on my YouTube channel.
Yes.
And I guess that's literally my life in a nutshell for the past few months, Matt. So have you got anything to add, or shall we move into the news?
I mean, nothing huge to add. I think just obviously 2026 is here. We'll talk about our expectations for that as part of the news. It's then, I think.
Hey, what did you get for Christmas?
What did I get for Christmas? I got Metroid 4. I have played.
Oh, I've got that too. I bought that too, but I haven't played it yet.
It's a good game. I've probably about 2/3 of the way through it. I haven't played it for a while, but I've enjoyed it.
Are you playing it like with a controller or the mouse?
With a controller.
Right.
You've seen my office. It's not particularly big. I'm a bit limited for space.
You're meant to be able to do it on your nutsack, Matt, though. You're supposed to be able to like stroke it on your leg if you want to, and
I think I'll give that a miss. I'll give that a miss somehow. I think it's probably a good idea.
Maybe not on the nutsack.
Well, probably not. I might get in trouble for that.
Yeah.
I got Battlefield 6. I haven't played that yet. I will play it eventually. I've got Kronos as well. That sort of survival horror game by Bloober. And
not heard of that.
Looks decent.
What's
I
that
actually
on?
bought PlayStation 5, both of those.
Okay.
I bought myself God of War 3 Remastered because it was only a tenner, and
Nice.
I will play that at some point.
Have you played any of that series before?
I played the God of Wars on PS4 and then Ragnarok on PS5. They were brilliant. Enjoyed both of those, but I never played the old ones. Never got round to it for whatever reason. So I'm quite looking forward to diving into those eventually. With my time being the way it is, that'll probably last me the year.
Yeah, it sounds like you got a nice stack of games there to get you going.
So yeah, and
through the year.
then it just disappeared, and then we're straight back into January and all hell breaking loose. So yeah, all good. But we'll dive into the news, I reckon.
Right, yeah. So we're going to play a piece of music first, I think. Get us back into the spirit of the show here with season 6. So this is a piece of music that I picked, and it's A Technique Passed Down. Okay, welcome back, guys. So we're into the news section here now. And at the top of the news section, I just want to say that if you missed or you're curious about any of the news from 2025, so that's from January all the way through to December, check out our previous podcast show, which covered all of that news. Essentially, it was our end of year special, which we do each and every year. That'll kind of get you back up to speed with where we're at now. But then since then, we've had a few bits and bobs trickle through. So Matt, we had an end of year message from Yu Suzuki, which we spoke about in said show. But since then, a week into January or a week or two, I'm not quite sure how long it's been now actually, but he released a second message, which is kind of his New Year's message. What was this about? Yeah,
it was with Famitsu. It came a bit out of I didn't even know Famitsu did sort of New Year messages. He may have done a few previously, actually. My memory's shocking because I'm nearly 40 now and my brain's just stopped. But he's done a New Year message, and a lovely piece of artwork actually came out with it, celebrating the year of the horse, I believe.
That's correct.
And I'm guessing it's very much in the vein of, if you remember the old Kickstarter artwork, they used to release it sort of certain holidays like Halloween, Christmas, New Year. It's very much in that vein. I think it's Kenji Miyawaki was doing them, so I'm guessing this is him again. Mm-hmm. It's got Shenmue 3 Enhanced written on it, and then you've got Ryo dressed up to the nines. You can see the Hazuki logo on his garment there. You can see Shenhua dressed up as well. then you've got the horses kicking about. And I think Switch actually did a analysis of the whole thing itself.
He did, yeah. He pointed out actually one of the horses has a plaster, and the other horse resembles Shenmue, so it's kind of like a Ryo horse and a Shenmue horse.
Yeah, very much
and Ryo
so.
has like the Hazuki crest on his baton thing, and Shenmue has flowers or something.
I just, do you know what? Completely unexpected piece of artwork, but really cool, really nice. I just thought it struck the tone
agreed.
really, really nicely. But I digress. So, New Year message. He says, Happy New Year to all Famitsu readers. We are currently working hard to prepare Shenmue 3 Enhanced, which we announced last year as a title that's easier to play and even more enjoyable. We hope you'll give us a little more time, which I thought was an interesting point there. He says, this year we once again take on new challenges to exceed expectations. We look forward to your continued support this year, which, going back a little bit further, there was an end of year message. I think I did videos on both of these actually. And he had a key word for the for 2026, which was circle or wholeness. Aspiration for the year ahead was next year also hope to continue taking on the challenge of game development and delivering fresh experiences to everyone. So sort of similar vein to what he was talking about. Recent news, in 2025, we announced release information for Shenmue 3 Enhanced. Please wait a little longer for this easier to play, higher quality version of Shenmue 3. And what are you keeping an eye on was the 2026 World Baseball Classic and the film adaptation of Outrun, which I completely forgot about.
Yeah, it's supposed to be, what's that woman's name? Sarah, not Sarah, maybe it's Sarah. Oh,
Is it Michael Bay directing it?
I think it's Michael Bay, and then there's...
I'm going to Google that right now.
Is it Sarah No, it's not Sarah Silverman, but there's some lady, I forget her name, like quite a young woman that's helping. Sydney Sweeney.
Okay, that's it. She's everywhere at the moment.
She is at the moment, so interesting they're like co-directing it or something.
It's such a random film. Great. I mean, hopefully...
Do you think she's ever played the game?
I'd be surprised. I mean, maybe she will do as part of the research for this film. Who knows? But I hope people at least get an intrigue of where this has come from, the game it's come from.
Yeah.
Because even now, I love playing Outrun. Great game.
I mean, if they're going to make a movie on it, they should surely have a tie-in game. Like, imagine a brand new Outrun 3 or something like that.
All over that. Over it.
But going back to Yu Suzuki's message, good point you made on you hope we give us a little bit more time. So that kind of sounds like a gentle, the game's going to be delayed.
It does.
It does a little bit, right?
I mean, we don't know what they're doing with it in terms of what versions of Unreal they're putting it into. I'm guessing they put it into a different version of Unreal because you've got DLSS, you've got FSR being put into it, which are the upscaling solutions from NVIDIA and AMD, which the version of Shenmue 3 from 2019 wouldn't support. The Unreal version wouldn't support that. So in order to support that, you need to put it into a new version of Unreal, whether that's a different version of 4 or 5, I don't know. Yeah. But with that, I would imagine brings challenges, and if you've got custom code and things in there and it breaks things or whatever. So there's clearly some work that may need to be done around that to implement all of that. I'm happy to wait. I'd rather they waited and did it properly. GTA, could be miles off by this point. I think Resident Evil's due out in February. So if they get it out sort of in that middle part of the year, if they have to, then I think they'll miss a lot of the big titles. But it has to be polished and it has to be right. They don't want to release something that's a buggy mess. If you do that, you're going to kill it, and we'll be right up the creek.
That's true, man. I mean, you'd hope that the game would be enhanced like the title. So, yeah, we'll have to wait and see on that one. And the other message, actually, which was interesting, is that he says about new experience, delivering fresh experiences to everyone. So does that mean Shenmue 3 Enhanced, or could that mean something else? Well, obviously, we know Steel Paws has been delisted, but then the logo's changed. But whether or not he's thinking of like a third game within this, I'm not sure.
I don't know. I mean, why isn't it put the lights on? So something is obviously paying the bills there. Now, Steel Paws, as you've rightly said, that logo's changed. I would anticipate that comes over to consoles and PC at some point in time. I don't think it's going to set the world alight in terms of sales or anything, but if they make a bit of money off of it, it should be a fairly straightforward port to run on the modern hardware, given it was a mobile game that wasn't particularly technologically taxing in any way, shape or form. So that could be one element to it. I think if he's working on a brand new game, I'd love to see what it is. Maybe it is Outrun 3. Who knows?
That would be amazing, right?
He has talked about wanting to do an Outrun style game, hasn't
actually,
he?
In the
past. So that could be there. Obviously, we all want Shenmue 4, and maybe, just maybe, that is it. I struggle a little bit. I still think we're probably in the position that we were in last year in that sense. But I guess, I don't know, when we started 2025, I know things were moving in a good direction, don't get me wrong, but we felt a long way off. We've come into 2026 with a lot of momentum from 2025, the BAFTA and everything else, and I just think it feels closer this year. It feels like that there's a real opportunity here for Shenmue 4, whether it's been signed or not. I really do think there's that momentum that community has created is making a difference, and I come into 26 feeling more optimistic than I did last year, this time last year at least anyway, and so just see what the year brings, I guess, with it.
Yeah, man, and we've still got a kind of a thing in the back pocket with the billboard money still, that we can maybe figure out what to do with that this year. So there's potential for growth, I think, this year, and
absolutely
we'll see where it leads us. Maybe we can do something to market Shenmue 3 Enhanced somewhat. I mean, obviously we're open to ideas, so if anyone's got any suggestions for what we could do with the billboard money to sort of advance the message, I guess, then let us know. But that's something that we're always constantly considering as the months and the bloody years pass.
Yeah, so, and it's sat in a bank account of mine earning sod all interest, but it's probably made about 20 quid.
Gives us an extra second of
extra second footage somewhere, something like that. I did have one idea around a billboard type thing, but I just don't know if we can pull it off. But that's something.
What's that? Is that a private thing, or? That's
a private thing that I think we should discuss behind the scenes, but I just don't know if we can pull it off.
Okay, I like where you're going with that. Striptease, eh?
Hey. Wow, I was playing with a Switch mouse on my ballsack, so
I'd pay good money for that.
Oh dear.
Okay, let's move on. So Figgy's Wave 2, Matt. What's been going on with that? So we actually were asked by Figgy's to do something with this kind of next wave, right? Which is really interesting because it sort of confirms that we're going to get a second wave.
I think it's pretty much nailed on in my view. So we got a message from Figgy's, I think it was on X actually, just saying, "Oh, would you guys mind setting up a poll to look at the characters for a Figgy's Wave 2 for Shenmue?" I was like, "Oh, of course we would. You know, we're not going to say no to that." So we popped up a Google poll, which is my new favourite toy at the moment, it seems. And we put a whole list of characters from sort of Nozomi, Guizang, Fukusan, all the way down to sort of your Shenmue 3 characters, your Mr. G, your Yang Lang, Chobu-chan. And we asked the community to vote. We had 353 responses on it. I'm not going to spoil who finished in the top 4, because I think what Figgy's like doing, they like doing the silhouettes, don't they, before revealing the characters. Yep. So we know who finished in the top 4, but I'm not going to spoil it because I don't want to get told off.
Goro, right?
Wow. Well, there's a few here that have finished very tightly within each other. And I think the ones that within that may end up, if there is a wave 3, could be ones that end up in a wave 3. There's a few that were very tight, very, very tight with each other.
Right. Be interesting to see the results of that. Obviously, I know them too, but got to kind of tease this potential outcome. So wait and see on that, guys. And we'll obviously communicate these over to Figgy's, and we'll see what's going to happen in the future. Absolutely. And we'll report on it as and when we know. And I'm pretty sure, actually, once the silhouettes appear, we'll be able to tell who they are, because we're diehard Shenmue fans, right? So even maybe an image of some hair would do it for some folk.
Oh God.
Right, let's move on again. So speaking of fan polls, Matt, we might as well go straight into that one. So if we skip the next topic and talk about the fan polls instead, considering we've discovered your new toy.
Yeah, so back end of, I think it was December 29th actually, I sort of sat there and sort of thinking how we can help Shenmue 4 out. I thought, do you know what, it's really, really worth sort of taking the temperature within the community and what's going on. So I put together a poll basically called Shenmue 4 Fan Interest and Purchase Intent Survey for 2025. Now, the idea of this, the data will get shared with WiseNet. We've prepared it. I'm just working out the best way to get it across to them at the moment. It may well have already gone by the time you hear this. And also combine that with the web stats we had off of the back of that fan trailer. Yes, I know people get upset about it, but the proof is in the pudding. We had 1 million hits within 24 hours, unique hits on the website alone. And it was insane, absolutely insane, all the buzz, all the media and everything. So it's all right, let's take the temperature of the community here. Now, I have done a deep dive video on it, which we'll link below so you can see it. But some of the things I found very, very interesting. A couple of bits I noticed here, that 81% of the people surveyed, bearing in mind I had over 1,800 responses to this thing, which is mad. So thank you, everybody who's responded. 81% are going to buy Shenmue 3 Enhanced in some form, which is brilliant. 85.5% of people would buy Shenmue 4 at full price on release, and there's 10.9% have said maybe. So if you get that together, that's quite a high number, especially when you put that to the Kickstarter, total Kickstarter backers, for example. If 85% of them bought it at full price on day one, you're not doing too badly, which would be good. Another one, if Shenmue 4 required crowdfunding support, would you back it? 75.5% said yes, with 16.7% saying maybe. That surprised me. I know at WiseNet and around the sort of people close to Shenmue, there's a stigma with crowdfunding, and I absolutely understand a lot of it, because I think while there were some elements of that Kickstarter that were not handled particularly well by the people running it, and I've always said that, some of the crap they got from people was downright disgusting. Absolutely disgusting and uncalled for. And I can understand why they want to stay away from crowdfunding, but there is an appetite within certainly the sample that I've got that it might be something to consider again. And if you add on that 16.7%, all of a sudden you're sort of 94% of people would back a Shenmue 4 crowdfunding effort if it happened. So that's interesting. And then the last interesting point was 78% of people would be interested in a Shenmue remake. Again, I've always found that topic quite controversial within the community about us always moving forward, which I get, but I also understand the arguments for a remake as a new way to attract new people, new audiences, and modernise what are classic games. So there's a lot here, which I think I'm going to delve into a lot more, especially the Shenmue 4 crowdfunding side of things and all of that. I've got a survey together. I'm just tweaking it at the moment, and then hopefully we'll have that out very, very shortly for everybody to respond to. But the response to this was beyond my wildest dreams. I wanted 1,000 responses. I got 1,800. Amazing. Thank you, everybody. And B, this has given me some real tangible data, which we've then extrapolated into scenarios and situations that maybe WiseNet can use. Whether they choose to or not, that's completely up to them. They might just chuck it all in the bin and go, yeah, no thanks, we know what we want to do. Fine. But I'd rather they have all of this information in front of them, because I don't think they'll have all of this, because this has never been done before, and that was the whole point. Yes, it's skewed to the Shenmue community. I'd love to get it out wider. I'd love to get more gamers looking at this potentially, but within the community, it's good to take that temperature, and also puts to bed the fact that I get people go, oh, but the community don't want a Shenmue 4. Yeah, they do. Absolutely do. Unequivocally do. But we said this in several videos over the years. Nail the story, and I think we're good. But yeah, very interesting all the same.
Yeah, agreed. And I think your point there, I don't think they'll have this data, because this data is modern. This is new. This is like the end of 2025, early 2026 kind of stats here, which I think are totally different than where we were in, say, 2019, 2020, 2021. I think people were more against kickstarting again back then, but now I think that stat there sort of shows that maybe enough time has passed that people are either willing to forgive, or we just want more Shenmue, which I suppose is the underlying outcome that everyone wants anyway. We just want more Shenmue, so whatever it takes is fine with us. So good data there, Matt. Good work on that. Let's move into this DualShockers name drop then, just as a quick little mention. What's this about? Yeah,
so DualShockers, well-known gaming outlet, just did an article basically of RPGs that spawned from Kickstarters. Shenmue 3's mentioned quite nicely, actually. They say it was a labour of love brought to life through the Kickstarter, through the passion of the community. He said that the third game is pretty divisive, but for fans of the first two games, they were likely thrilled, but for modern RPG fans, probably felt a bit archaic. But it was a welcome return to a long-gone franchise and at least kept the fans generally happy. They say it's unlikely we'll see another one anytime soon. I beg to differ. I do think we can get one. But again, the fact that Shenmue's in these... You always see these polls every couple of months, don't you? Something like these sorts of lists. And Shenmue is always in and around it. So that's the sort of the hard foundational graft of what we're doing is exactly this, to keep Shenmue in those sort of people's thoughts and go, oh yeah, it was a Kickstarter. Oh yeah, it was on this console or whatever. That's the point of what we're doing. Also on top of trying to get Shenmue 4.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, last little mention here, Dreams of Saturn 3.0. Obviously, we did the show with George over Christmas.
Bang it.
If you're not aware, this is a fan game. You can download this right now. It's probably the best fan game ever created so far. It's a 17-hour epic experience. It's full of mini-games. It's full of Sega references, full of Saturn references, full of Dreamcast references. If you're a Sega fan, if you're a Shenmue fan, you must because you're listening to the show, but you owe it to yourself to play Dreams of Saturn. It's available for both PC and Mac. Give it a go. I know it's not Christmas anymore, but it doesn't need to be. The game is epic.
Banging
and
game.
Obviously, if you're waiting for more Shenmue, here's a taste, a slice of Shenmue for you.
Yes.
Created by
George.
By George. I was trying to think of a nice describing word for him, but we'll leave it at that. I'll make another brief mention, actually. So we're selling some Shenmue Dojo 25th anniversary pins.
We are.
And all the proceeds obviously go back towards the website. Any money that we ever generate from what we're doing here, whether it be YouTube memberships, etc., all goes back into the site running costs. There's some very expensive behind-the-scenes costs that make the dojo tick that people probably aren't aware of, like how much money we actually spend on this as a side project, little hobby kind of thing. But to keep the dojo alive, every little helps. And we've got, at the time of recording, 38 of these pins left.
Yeah.
And actually, Matt, they're in-house, so we're not far off shipping these. We want to get a couple more little additions. I want to get some stickers sent across to you at some point, and obviously we need to package them and label them and etc. And if, depending on where you live, it's going to take a little time for these to arrive, but just know that they are in-house now, and we'll probably show a picture of one on the screen. And Matt, quality-wise, what we're talking?
I'm really happy, really happy with them, actually. They turned up, in actual fact, we're recording on a Saturday, so they turned up yesterday, and I had a quick open one up, had a look at it, had an inspection of it, very happy, nice firm quality. I'd argue the logo comes out better on these pins than the one last year. The one last year was really good, thoroughly good pin, but I think this one, and it popped more for me. I'm very happy with them.
That's good to hear. And these have actually been designed on gold metal.
They have.
I'm not sure how that looks in person, but if it looks like gold, and I don't know if it feels like gold, maybe there's some value in that.
Maybe. I mean, if it's Shenmue 4 happens, you might get some value out of it. I will just shout out Jibby. Obviously, made the logo for us as he does every year, and I think he outdoes himself every year with the logos.
Yeah, I'd agree. This is probably my favourite that he's done. But then I probably said that about last year's, but it just shows the high level of quality on the logos. Like you said, I don't know what he's going to be doing for the 26th. Maybe it might be worth just holding out for the 30th now and just get this 5-year milestones maybe instead.
Maybe.
Okay, so that's kind of the end of the news. I will just give another brief mention to our expectations for 2026. So if you're interested, we released that as a separate video if you're a YouTube listener here. So you can go check out our expectations in a separate video, or if you're a podcast soaker, then you can go back to the end of the year special that we did, and it's right at the end actually. I can't quite remember how long we went for, but maybe like the last 30 minutes of that particular show is our expectations for 2026, and that is where we are currently at the start of 2026. We've got a brand new season of the dojo, so let's kick off with this massive, I guess, interview piece that we want to look at here, Matt. Huge. So we're going to get stuck straight in after this. Okay, guys, let's get stuck into this. So again, this is on phantomriverstone.com, where Switch has kindly translated this, obviously, for his own blog post, but we're using the translated version just because it's got a lot more detail. So you may have read this actually a couple of years ago now.
Yes.
This was released December 2024, and obviously Google Translate perhaps doesn't really present this information in its truest form. So this is why we're going to look at it again, and we never actually looked at it on a show, so this is going to be new, and hopefully some of this data will be, or information is going to be new to you guys as well. Some very interesting stuff there. So right off the bat, pictured at the top here, we've got the devs that were interviewed here. So to celebrate the 25th anniversary of Shenmue's release on the Dreamcast in Japan, Famitsu.com invited several former project members to reminisce over dinner about their experience working to create the masterpiece that is Shenmue and reflect on the game's legacy. So we've got Takeshi Hirai, we've got Eigo Kashihara, we've got Makoto Wada, we've got Keiji Okayasu, Kenji Miyawaki, Takashi Matsuda, Toshiyuki Kuroka. That's all of them there, sat amongst a table waiting on, I guess, some type of cuisine that they're going to be.
Yeah, it's like a round table sort of type of discussion, isn't it? Almost.
But they've all got plates and chopsticks, so getting ready to eat something, I think.
Yeah.
So just a little bit of extra information on these key members. So Eigo Kasahara served as the planning director for Shenmue 1 and 2, and he also worked on the Shenmue Passport and the PS4 remaster. Makoto Wada is a programmer on Shenmue 1 and was the lead programmer on Shenmue 2. Takeshi Arai was the main system programmer on Shenmue 1. Keiji Okayasu was the assistant director on Shenmue 1, 2, and 3. Toshiyuki Kuroka is a programmer that was involved with Shenmue 1, who focused on events around the Hazuki residence and the basement. We've got Takashi Matsuda, who was a CG designer for Shenmue 1 and 2 and created many of the game's NPCs. And then finally, Kenji Miyawaki, obviously we spoke about a little bit earlier with the New Year's piece of artwork that we think he's responsible for. He, of course, is a graphic designer responsible for character designs and UI across the series. So, according to this, the discussion's full of fun stories and inside jokes, while at the same time revealing just how intense the work environment was at the time and the immense dedication shown by the development team to bringing the games to life. Not to mention the startling revelation that a PS2 port of Shenmue 1 was developed internally but never released. I didn't go home for 2 months, one of the dinner participants says. This isn't that kind of game, Yu Suzuki, upon discovering that the developers have implemented boob jiggle physics. We created Yokosuka from scratch in just 1 year after the game's announcement at the Shenmue premiere, Takeshi Hirai said.
Wow.
And the article translation starts now, Matt, if you want to take over.
Yeah, okay. And so on December 29th, 1999, exactly 25 years ago, a game was released by Sega Enterprises, as the company was known at the time, titled Shenmue Chapter 1 Yokosuka. It introduced a new genre known as free, full reactive eyes entertainment, offering players an unprecedented level of freedom to explore a carefully crafted Japanese town while progressing through the story. The main plot follows a young man investigating the mystery behind his father's death. At the same time, the game includes a wide range of side activities such as capsule toy machines and arcades. It also features a combat system based on Virtua Fighter. Every town resident was given a unique name, a behavioural routine, and all of them were fully voiced. The level of detail and forward-thinking design attracted a great deal of attention. Naturally, the production costs soared, and the total budget reportedly reached 7 billion yen. I'd have to do a conversion on that, but that's a lot of money one way or the other.
It's about 40 grand at the moment, I think.
Bloody hell.
7 billion, sorry. It'd be 400. Oh, maybe it'd be more than that then. Would it be? Maybe that's the 40 million then?
Hang on. Let's have a quick Google. It is £33 million.
33 million, okay. And that's the yen is very low at the moment, so that might have been upwards of 40.
So in dollars, it's $44 million. And I know $47 million was one figure that was quoted a few years back. And there was another 70 million quoted another, but anyway. So either way, very expensive, isn't it? At the time, this earned the game a Guinness World Record as the most expensive video game ever made, and I have that Guinness World Records in my loft as well. I kept that one, believe it or not. As you might imagine from the finished product, the development environment behind Shenmue was said to be nothing short of intense. Even now, 25 years later, stories from the time continue to surface. What was it really like? How was a game later described as a legend actually made? And what was Sega AM2's division like in the 1990s? To find out, we gathered 7 former developers who worked on Shenmue AM2 for a reunion at Izakaya, which is a Japanese-style pub somewhere in Tokyo. Perhaps because it had been so long since they'd seen each other, the atmosphere was a bit reserved at first, but as the drinks started flowing, the mood warmed up and the conversation turned into deep, rarely heard stories. We've kept the publishable parts as close to the original as possible and edited the less publishable ones just enough to make them printable. Enjoy these episodes from the development of Shenmue, a game that truly lives up to its legendary reputation. I know Famitsu really likes Shenmue. They've always backed it. So to see... Yeah, there's a passion behind this as well. And then the things they cover, it's a broad range of topics here. So you've got a table of contents, which is first off reuniting the elite developers who created Shenmue 25 years on, the harshness of the development environment, turning ideas into reality, the Shenmue Maker programming concept, countless stories about Yu Suzuki, the 25th anniversary comment from Yu Suzuki, Shenmue's pivotal role in developers' lives, development of the more expansive Shenmue 2, if Shenmue 4 were to be made, what does Shenmue mean to each of you, and the 25th anniversary comment from Masaya Matsukaze.
Nice. Okay.
Busy.
Very busy. So again, this is probably going to span a few episodes, and if you'd like to actually read this yourself, obviously the link will be in the show notes below. So we're going to start with the first topic here, reuniting the elite developers who created Shenmue 25 years on. So Famitsu asks, is this the first time some of you have seen each other in a while? Kasahara says, some of us still see each other from time to time, but yeah, there are a few people I haven't seen in quite a while. Matsuda says, back then, I had just joined the company. I was a total newbie designer, so while I remember people like Mr. Okuyasu, Mr. Kashihara, and Mr. Wada, I doubt any of you really remember me. Then Kuroka says, same here, I was just starting out as a rookie programmer. Matsuda, it was the kind of environment where even brand new graduates or people in their early 20s were constantly being handed work.
Sounds busy, doesn't it?
Yeah, a taste of the busyness there.
So, come on then. So this round table is a special feature for the 25th anniversary of Shenmue. We wanted to bring together people who were there at the time to talk about the stories and memories from the development that are still talked about to this day. So everyone, they sort of go a bit silent. The person who's written this goes, why does it suddenly get so quiet? And Okuyasu comes back and says, well, and he laughs. He says, well, there's just so many memories, it's hard to know where to begin. Harai says there were some tough times too, and I have heard that through the years. Kenji Miyawaki says, personally, I don't have any painful memories though. Kashihara says, you're a special case, and obviously a bit of laughing erupts there. Matsuda says, everybody was basically staying overnight at the office, right? And Kashihara says, I think the statute of limitations has passed by now, so I'll say this. I remember looking at Wada's time card back then and being completely shocked at his hours. Even though we were working in the same department, he was barely going home at all. Matsuda says, right, Mr. Wada was always at his desk, wasn't he? And then Wada-san just has a bit of a cringe, doesn't deny it.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy, isn't it? The kind of work mentality back in those days.
Yeah, look, crunch, sleeping under your desks. You look at, there's loads of photos over the years of various games and developers staying at the office and all the rest of it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so to start, could each of you tell us what role you had on Shenmue back then and what you're doing now? So Okuyasu says, I'm Okuyasu, Vice President of Fun Corporation. At the time, I was the Assistant Director, responsible for turning Yusan's vision into reality. I also served as a point of contact for staff when they needed guidance or had concerns. Kashihara says, I'm Kashihara and I'm actually the only one here who's still at Sega. Interesting. Yeah. I worked as the planning director on both Shenmue titles. In short, I was a planner and designer. I was also in charge of what Shenmue find former managing director Yukawa and the supporting software Shenmue Passport. In 2018, I served as a localization producer on the Shenmue 1 and 2 port. And then Switch has added a note here. So What Shenmue is a demo disc kind of thing, non-commercial. I think everyone knows about this actually, but Yukawa was the public face of the Dreamcast at the time and appeared in this demo. And then the passport, obviously all of the stuff there that you can get additional information on, profiles, maps, and etc. Also download Sukapass if you want on the Apple Store and, well, Apple Test Flight. Just go to sukapass.com actually. It all makes sense there. And then Harai says, I'm Harai, founder and former CEO of Nilo. At the time I was the main programmer. There was an overwhelming number of program files that made up the code base for Chapter 1, and I personally wrote about 3/4 of them. So honestly, you could say I made Shenmue, and he laughs. And then I guess Famitsu says, wow. And then Okuyasu says, oh, come on, you don't have to start with bragging. We know all about bragging. Next, Mr. Wada, the one who reportedly hardly ever went home, says, at the time, I wasn't a full-time Sega employee. I worked on Shenmue as a contract programmer. I actually joined the project partway through. Later on, I officially joined Sega and remained there until July 2024. I've since left the company and now work elsewhere. Looking back, I realised that Shenmue is what led me to join Sega in the first place. And then Miyawaki says, I worked on Shenmue as a designer. I was mainly in charge of character design and also handled UI design and most of the 2D graphics. Famitsu says, you're the one that drew the original character design sheets for Ryo, Hazuki, Shenmue and the rest of the cast, aren't you? So then there's got a picture, yeah. And then Matsuda says, next, I'm Matsuda, CEO of Toydia. Shenmue was the very first title I worked on after joining Sega straight out of college, and among the members here, I was the most junior. Technically, I wasn't part of the Shenmue team at first, but I got pulled in partway through to help out and ended up staying on. I mainly worked on 3D character models. And then finally, Kuroka says, I was around the same age as Mr. Matsuda, and I worked on Shenmue as a contract programmer. For Chapter 1, I mainly handled the event programming related to Ryo Hazuki, specifically the Hazuki residence and the basement areas.
So there's quite a breadth of people here. And they sort of go on to then talk about sort of the ages and the roles. So with this diverse group in terms of age and roles, we're looking forward to hearing a wide range of memories from the development of Shenmue. And Harai says, I have a lot of vivid memories, but to start with, I joined the team about 6 months after the project had already begun. At the time, there were around 15 programmers then, and then about 15 more people, including myself, joined. That brought the total to around 30 programmers. The Shenmue development team was originally part of the second software R&D division, better known as AM2. It was a department that focused on arcade game development. So while the team had produced hit after hit like Daytona USA and Virtua Fighter, most of the programmers didn't have much experience working on large-scale projects with so many people. They weren't very good at coordinating with each other. At that point, the team decided it was time to appoint a lead programmer to guide the rest. That's when we had what was basically a general election within the team to decide who it would be. I think that was your idea, wasn't it, Mr. Okuyasu? And he comes back to say, that's right, I figured a general vote would be the best way to choose someone to take the lead. Harai said, so everyone wrote down a name and cast their votes. I ended up being chosen as the lead programmer. The next day, Mr. Okuyasu called me in and just said, you're the lead programmer now. And Okuyasu comes back to say, don't actually remember that, and laughs at it. And Harai says, you probably just didn't care that much about me. There's already some sort of banter back and forth, so clearly the drinks have started.
Old friends kind of thing.
Started flowing. It's sort of old friends going over memories, isn't it? So that's good.
Yeah. Next question. So was the reason Mr. Harai was chosen because he was particularly skilled and capable as a programmer? Harai says, I had a lot of experience developing for home consoles and I was already familiar with Sega hardware. At the very beginning, Shenmue wasn't even planned for the Dreamcast. It started as Virtua Fighter RPG The Legend of Akira, which was going to be released on the Sega Saturn, so I was pretty proficient with Saturn programming. And then we got an example photo of, I think we took that actually, maybe. Oh no, that probably from...
That from the game... Oh,
yeah,
the game
it isn't it? Because it's got that G bottom right, yeah.
Yeah.
On top of that, I also worked as a systems engineer, so I was good at setting up the development environments, as well as optimizing and speeding up rendering and code. I imagine that's why I was chosen. Of course, there were plenty of programmers more talented than me, but I think I stood out for being able to cover a broad range of areas. Okuyasu says, you see what I mean? He's got this whole I'm amazing vibe going on, right? No wonder he got picked. Hirai says, no, I didn't give off that vibe during the voting, with a wry smile. Okayasu says, basically, he had a natural leadership quality, and for the record, both Hirai and Kashihara originally came from Sega's Kansai development group. They were sent to Tokyo under the pretense of just helping out, but they ended up fully embedded in the Shenmue team. Kasuhara says, yeah, we were hunted by Shenmue, and laughs. So a note here, Shenmue Hunting, which is Shenmue Gari in Japanese, is a nickname that arose during the development of Shenmue 1, referring to the large-scale and often aggressive recruitment of staff from inside and outside of Sega. Due to its forceful nature and the sheer scale of it, people began calling it Shenmue Gari.
Ah, there you are. That's interesting. I think, given the, now, because it was a AAA game back then, now that sort of breadth of people is quite common, and all that coordination is quite common, but back then it wouldn't have been, and they quickly realised this is a project far bigger than the current staffing, and obviously had to go, right, you're working for me now, and basically ship them over and chuck them in the office. And then he says, the infamous rumour. And Matsuda says, it's a great term, isn't it? And laughs. Kashihara says, this is what people mean when they talk about Shenmue hunting. Staff from other teams and even other companies were pulled into the project one after another, in some cases almost forcibly.
Wow.
Hirai was told, I was told it'll be over in 6 months when I came to Tokyo. But of course, it didn't end at all. Well, it did eventually, but still. Kashihara said, same here, both of us were told it'd be 6 months, but naturally it went way beyond that. Hirai said, before joining Sega and Kansai, we were both at IREM. Back at IREM, we released at least one game a year, but after joining Sega, due to timing and bad luck, I spent about 3 years without releasing anything. So when I heard the game will be released in 6 months, I thought then, definitely I want to be involved, and made the trip from Kansai to Tokyo. And in the end, it took a further 4 years.
Wow, okay.
Dear. Okayasu, among the programmers already on the team, there weren't many people who had what it takes to lead a group. I had a sense that Hirai had that kind of leadership quality, and the fact he was chosen in a vote suggests that the rest of the team saw him in that way. I don't remember the fine details, but under normal circumstances, Yu-san would have pointed to someone and said, you're the lead programmer, before kicking off the project. The fact that it hadn't been decided properly means he was struggling to find the right person at the time.
Okay, and then we've got Mr. Kuruka. How was your experience working on the event programming? So he says, when building the events, I had to bring together all kinds of assets, so story elements, text, graphics, and assemble them into a working sequence. The hardest part was that the content kept changing almost every week. We also had a kind of prototype build that we used for meetings, and I remember how the planning team would actually do the voicing for the events themselves. They just record the voices right there in the meeting room. So we kind of experienced some of that in that Shenmue 2 Game Jam beta. There was obvious staff members voicing some of the characters, which was quite amusing, I guess. Also, this is something that ended up getting cut, but I once created a full daily routine for Fukusan. One of the behaviours I programmed was him going into the toilet and using it, but in the end someone said it'd be pretty awkward if the player opened the door while he was in there, and the entire event got scrapped. So
dear.
Wouldn't like to see Fukusan having a poo.
Oh no, I think it's probably best they got rid of it. And it says, how about you, Mr. Matsuda? He said, even for that time, Shenmue had an overwhelming number of characters. The character designers just couldn't keep up. No matter how many they drew, there were still more townspeople to design, like random old men and women. Eventually, our 3D modelling team started creating characters directly without design sheets. Now, we've seen those design sheets. We have some of them on the website.
True, yep.
And some of them went through a lot of revisions as well. So on top of that, they're then creating and revising. It must have been insane. Absolutely insane at the time. He said, I had expected we'd be handed the original design and artwork and then model it in 3D. But I just joined the company, and they already let me do design work too. I remember thinking, what an amazing free-spirited company this is. I think it was more of a needs-must situation by the sounds of it. Every mod was modelling characters based on their own designs, and before long, it became a trend to base characters on our co-workers. I clearly remember how we started competing to see who could make the most Shenmue-style character that looked like someone on the team.
Right, so this kind of, I know there's a few characters obviously that already stick out that are based on Sega staff members, but obviously I guess this could have worked its way into that model of Yu Suzuki that we got. So someone making the most Shenmue style character that still looked like someone could have been a bit of a joke, I guess. Well, I'm assuming it probably was a joke in the end.
Yeah.
And actually, when we asked Yu Suzuki, he didn't actually know that was a thing. So there are actually staff-based characters in the game, Famitsu says.
Yes.
Matsuda says, tons. I'm in there too. In Shenmue 2, I appear as a guy covered in full-body tattoos. Kasahara says, yeah, those characters just kind of appeared without anyone noticing. Hirai says, I think I'm in chapter 1 somewhere too. And he, according to this image below here, is the bartender.
Yes.
Is that MJQ?
It looks like it, yeah. Yeah, it is, I think.
Yeah. And then Kurok says, I heard I'm in a Chinese restaurant. I didn't even know until someone told me later. So how many Chinese restaurants are there? Got to be Tao-san, maybe?
Got to be Tao-san's, yeah, I guess.
Achiichi, I don't know. Matsuda says the modelling team kind of ran wild. They were like, if this is allowed, we're just going to keep it going. And they started turning all the staff into 3D characters. So quite a few of us ended up in the game. I played one of the guys who gets beaten up by Ryo. So I'd see myself getting knocked out and just crack up.
And actually, Switch has put a rated post up there as well. Characters, Shenmue characters based on actual people. It's probably, if you're going to dive into some of that, that's probably the article to go and look at.
Yeah.
Okay, so then moving on. Mr. Karuka, Mr. Matsuda, you were both quite young at the time. What was your impression of the development environment back then? Karuka said, during meetings, we would take turns operating the game for demonstration purposes. I clearly remember how exhausted the senior staff members always looked. There would always be all kinds of back and forth discussions going on, and while I wasn't directly participating in the meetings, once my shift at the controls were over, I'd head back to the team and we'd all grumble like, guess the specs are changing again, which is coherent with a lot of the accounts that this game just sort of spiraled into other things and just kept going. Matsuda said, for me, it was one of the most densely packed work environments I've ever experienced in my life. People from all sorts of companies were involved in finishing Shenmue, and new faces were coming and going every week. The sheer density of people was insane. The desks weren't as wide as today's 140cm ones. They were packed so tightly that your shoulders would touch the person next to you. It was completely crammed. And back then, you didn't need to go to a designated smoking area to smoke. So you had this combination of huge manpower, extreme crowding, cramped office space, and on top of that, it was the 1990s. There was cigarette smoke everywhere.
Mad.
That feeling of being boxed in, that atmosphere, is something I still remember vividly, an unforgettable scene. Technically, there was a smoking area outside, but nobody really used it. People just smoked inside. And there's a photo of the office environment there.
That's funny to think, actually, when I look at that Landy bust I've got, and it's got kind of like yellow staining. It's probably like 4+ years of non-stop smoking attached to it. Maybe.
If you've got 100 people in that office all like having a cigarette at random times, it's all going to be, it's going to like that haze, isn't it, across the office? And Kashihara said that's because Yusan smoked, so everybody else did too. And once Yusan quit smoking, nobody was allowed to anymore.
Nice, I like that. So everyone got off the addiction because Yusan
followed the boss.
Yeah. Mr. Miyawaki, how about you? As the one who designed the main characters. So Miyawaki said, I didn't come from the game industry. I originally aspired to be a manga artist, but since I couldn't make a living off that alone, I was working part-time at a bookshop. Then one day an acquaintance asked if I could do a kind of freelance gig, drawing quick illustrations based on ideas that came up during a game plan meeting. So I took the job, and when I showed up, Yusan said, I want this guy to be the main character designer, just like that. I suddenly found myself working on Shenmue. Out of nowhere, I was doing design work for a major game company, Sega, no less. It was a huge surprise, but I had no experience with game development, so I was completely out of my depth. I remember constantly asking people around me for help whilst struggling to keep up.
That's mad, isn't it? It just turns up, right, you're in charge of the character design, now have fun.
I know, huh? It must have, obviously we've seen some of that early design work, and obviously his artwork's stunning, so...
Brilliant.
And very much actually more manga style in some of those artworks we've seen.
Yeah, I would agree. You can see that sort of anime manga inspiration. Whereas you look at the recent artwork and the end of year message, it's, I don't know, it feels a bit more modern, doesn't it, compared to that, I guess. But I said, did you feel a lot of pressure at the time? Miyawaki came back and said there were plenty of artists who could draw better than me, and yet I was the one designing the main character. So yes, I felt a lot of pressure. Plus, since I came out of nowhere, I think people around me are probably wondering, who is this guy? Hirai came back and said, well, Yusan really loved his art style. Anytime something came up, he'd say, get Miyawaki in here. He relied heavily on Miyawaki's work.
Get Miyawaki in here.
Get him in here. Okuyasu, Miyawaki never had to deal with the unreasonable demands and his work went very smoothly. He might be the only person who never had any conflicts with anyone. He was really good at navigating things. And they all laugh. He said, Miyawaki said, no, you mention it. I don't really remember having any arguments with anyone.
Good. It sounds like conflict was almost expected. Is that fair to say? Kasahara says the development floor was a battlefield and they all laugh. Hirai, I can't even count how many arguments I witnessed. There was guaranteed to be some kind of clash every Thursday and Friday, especially during the final year.
So then it comes on to what happened on Thursdays, and Okuyasu said that is one of my strongest memories. Every Thursday we had a full team meeting where we would gather all the pieces we'd worked on and compile them into a single build. The meeting would start in the evening and usually end at around 2 or 3 in the morning. Wow. Okay. Naturally, no one could go home. Afterwards, each department would receive a list of revision requests like, please fix this or fix that, and that's how the day would end. One thing
so you'd go home pissed off.
Yeah, you go home at 3 a.m, thoroughly pissed off, and have to go back to work for 8, 9 o'clock in the morning.
It's just trash.
Yeah, no, shit, get rid, do it again. And you're like, it's 3 a.m.
Because I'm peeing in the toilet. Oh, get rid.
No, yeah. Oh, dear. That hair's out of alignment, do it again.
And honestly, when we've seen some of the revisions from the 3D artworks that we had, like the hairline changing isn't actually out of the question. It's like you literally had to change the minuscule amounts of detail.
Yeah, and it's the amount of revision some of those characters went through. If you look at some of those sheets, was insane. They said, one thing I clearly still remember is a night when, as usual, the meeting wrapped up at around 3 a.m. and Yusan went to sleep. Afterward, the rest of us stayed up to compile instructions for each department. Then we also tried to get a little sleep. The next morning, as soon as Yusan woke up, the first thing he said was, is it done? When we told him it's not done, he asked why not, with a wry smile. All we can say was because we were sleeping. Yusan genuinely didn't seem to realise that we also needed sleep.
It makes it sound like they're all just sat sleeping at the desk. Or
doesn't it?
Like Yu Suzuki, like 3 a.m. the meeting finished, and Yu Suzuki just carries on sitting in the same seat and falls asleep, then wakes up at the same seat. It just sounds like an insane working environment.
It does, and the amount of hours that have gone into that, man hours must be it's thousands, isn't it? Thousands. Yep.
So I see. So it was all-nighters all the time. Did you ever go out for drinks after work? And Kasahara says, sometimes, yes, but it wasn't like big group outings. It was more like small groups of a few people. Things were so rough that you really only wanted to drink with others who understood what you were going through. We'd go out to lick our wounds together, he laughs. And there were female staff members too, so people got closer and relationships started to form. We actually had a few Shenmue marriages come out of that environment.
That's good. So some good positives there. He said, and then, wow, that's actually really heartwarming. Miyawaki said, I remember there was this one incident involving the company's internal BBS, bulletin board system. There was a single dot on the screen that looked like a speck of dust at first glance, but if you clicked it, it opened this hidden message from a programmer bragging about his girlfriend.
Wow, that's such a classic 1990s kind of story.
That is, isn't it? People look at it and go, oh yeah. Ugh.
Yeah. Hirai says, we also often went to play Mahjong. Kasahara, oh yeah, we did. We'd work until late at night, then go to a Mahjong parlour and play until morning, then head straight to the office after that. Hirai says, I can say this now, but at the time, to avoid being interrupted by questions or requests during work hours, I would go play Mahjong until the last train. Then after the trains had stopped, I headed into the office and worked until morning. I even posted about it on the team's internal BBS, and I remember getting scolded by Mr. Okuyasu for it. Then Okuyasu says, Hirai even used me as an excuse to his wife. Like, I had no choice, Okuyasu-san invited me, when in reality he was just out at the Mahjong parlour. Wonder if his wife's read this since. Oof. Hirai says, that's right, laughs. During the latter half of development, I think I only went home about twice a month. I was doing it intentionally, but basically I either slept at the office or played Mahjong. My apartment was only a 10-minute walk from the office, but even going home felt like it would be wasting time. Even
though it was just 10 minutes away. And then Okuyasu says he was still either asleep at the office or playing Mahjong. I was still getting my work done though, says Harai, and he laughs. Okuyasu says, are you sure there wasn't another reason you didn't want to go home? And Harai says, nothing like that. But one thing was true. Whenever Mr. Okuyasu invited me out for drinks or mahjong, it was always meant he was about to ask me to take on a big job. So I think, here it comes, and go out with him knowing full well I was about to get more work. Okuyasu, it sounds unthinkable now, but back then pulling all-nighters was just normal. If you went home before the last train, people would actually glare at you. It was a full-on toxic workplace stuff, which I can see that when you look at it now. Of course, not everybody was an employee of Sega. We had outside contractors too, and many of them did go home properly. That said, game development was kind of like that in general at the time. Shenmue just may have taken it to another level. And I think looking at the AAA titles before this sort of crunch culture became known, I actually think they all did it for a long time. Long time. Mad.
Yeah. It is mad. I mean, we've all kind of had a job that we've not really enjoyed, I guess, or thought it was toxic in places, I guess, but this literally does sound like another level, doesn't it? Like forced to work well past whatever your conditional hours would be. I don't know. I guess I'm assuming they all got paid for these additional hours, but maybe not. I don't know how it works.
If salaried, they wouldn't have done. I wouldn't have thought back then, especially. Crazy. I don't think they'd have got paid. Not for the hours. They might have eventually got a nice bit of money out at the end of it, but they're not going to get. You wouldn't have got overtime, I wouldn't have thought.
Mad.
Could be wrong.
Yeah, I'm not sure how it works, but obviously this sort of shows the stresses of the development of Shenmue that you can kind of appreciate actually now. You can see the love and care actually at the end result, despite all the teething issues, I guess, that were involved with this kind of development.
It's dedication, isn't it, as well? I know there was almost an expectation on it, but you've got to be dedicated. You've got to have some sort of love for your craft to go through that, surely. And
respect someone like Yu Suzuki too.
Yeah,
to go through not just chuck your dummy out the pram and go home, I guess. It's... Yeah.
Which they would have had a right to do. I mean, working some of the hours they were working. I've heard a story many years ago. Someone said to me, Shenmue left a big scar on Sega in terms of the development. Now, that's a very broad stroke of an argument, and I get that. But when you hear some of the stories like this, you can understand why some people maybe don't look upon Shenmue as fondly who worked on the project. But we do as fans. We love the game. Obviously, we wouldn't be doing this if we weren't. But there's clearly some people that found that quite challenging and quite difficult. But also other people who are, like in this interview, who are talking about it, actually, despite all the hardships, enjoyed it and look back upon it quite fondly. So it's very interesting to see that divide, I think.
Yeah, and we'll actually see that unfold as we get through this interview when they start reminiscing a little bit more. But I think that might be a good time to have a little break here, Matt. So we're going to play a piece of music called NOZOMI'S AMULET. So let's have a little breather. Welcome back, guys. So we're into part 2 of this 6-part blog post. Could maybe get through this and part 3.
See how we get on.
A little bit shorter. I just had a quick scroll through. They're a little bit smaller than that first part.
Oh, yeah, they are actually, in fairness. Yeah. Let's see how we get on then.
We'll see how we get on. So this is a little bit of a summary at the top of part 1, and then we're going to move straight into the harshness of the development environment. So Harai says, you really shouldn't be starting meetings at 10 p.m, right? We did have a nap room, though. Nap room. So you've got like the meeting room, the general office, the storeroom, the boardroom.
Can you imagine like being inducted on that day, right? So your first day, Mr. Oliver, here's your desk, here's you go. Right, so the meeting room where we do all the meetings, this is the toilets, this is the kitchen, here's the nap room. I'll be going, why is there a nap room? The what?
The nap room. Okay, this job sounds quite easy. I can just go for a sleep whenever I want.
No. Nobody sleeps here.
Unless you use Suzuki.
Apparently.
Yeah. And no one smokes anymore. That said, my previous company wasn't very different, so I thought, it's the same here too. That was just the era that we were in. So still, during Shenmue's development, I felt way more pressure. I remember seeing my time card showing XX hours for a single month. So Switch has put a note here that the original article did not provide the exact figures, but XX and YY are placeholders for the actual numbers. So obviously, maybe so many hours that they don't want to reveal, I'm not sure.
Right to think.
So Kasahara says, if we're talking about work hours, then it has to be Wada. Like we mentioned earlier, when you looked at his time card, he'd barely gone home all month. And he wasn't the kind of guy to fudge the numbers or cheat the systems either. He recorded hours for 1 month with something like YY hours.
So we could only laugh. I mean, there's only about 720 hours in a month, assuming 24 hours times 30 days. Harai, Wada was known as the mainstay of the team. He was always present in the office. That's how dedicated he was. And he wasn't even a full-time employee.
Wow. So he's on a part-time wage.
Yeah, and he's still there. Just don't go home. And then Cash Harris said, no matter when you showed up, he was always there.
Wow. So, Mr. Wada, why were you working that much? He says, I was a contract employee and I originally worked at another company doing various types of development, but I was brought onto Shenmue under contract, and the content of that contract was to see Shenmue through to the release. So I felt that unless the game shipped, I hadn't fulfilled my responsibility, and I was just doing what I believed was required of me. So to put it simply, I just didn't go in for 2 months. Especially towards the end of development, we had about 2 solid months of debugging, and the team had to operate 24 hours a day. There were times during debugging when the game would crash and the testers would be stuck, unable to do anything, until morning. And that happened several times, but with no programmers around at those hours, the bugs couldn't be fixed. Once someone said, we can't do any debugging because there's no programmer here. So I realised I had to be available around the clock. After that, I basically worked 24 hours a day. Which actually, thinking about it, man, if you'd not left the office for 2 months, where is he getting new clothes from? Where is he changing? Where is he getting his food and refreshments from? And it must have stunk in there. I know you got the smoke smell, but people's body odor and...
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I guess people would maybe have had showers and things in the office.
Must
they could use. You still got to wash the clothes and things, unless like people were like running home for his wife or someone running, gave him clothes and did like swaps, and he was ordering food into the office when he was hungry.
Maybe.
And man, that does sound rough, doesn't it? Wow. When did you even sleep? Was the question. Harai, seriously, when did Wada sleep? Wada, honestly, I probably just didn't sleep much at all. Kashihara, he slept from 5 in the morning till 5:15 in the morning. Harai said, laughed. He said, yeah, I really felt like he barely slept. He'd say, I'm going to get some sleep, and then he'd already be back, and we'd be like, wait, you're up already? And then Wada said, when they say sleep, I mean there was some cardboard laid out under a desk. I just lie down there for a bit.
Wow. So Matsuda says everyone was sleeping on cardboard back then. Wada, we were running debugging in 3 shifts, 24 hours a day, and the programmers had to be split into 3 shifts as well. At first, we tried doing just 2 shifts, but everyone burnt out, so we gave up on that plan. And Miyawaki says 2 shifts was impossible and laughs. Wada says, even with 3 shifts, simple bugs can be fixed by anyone, but when it came to trickier bugs, only Harai or I could handle them. There was a certain tool that required in-depth hardware knowledge, and the only ones who really knew how to use it were the 2 of us. So one of us always had to be on site, and that's why I ended up staying in the office all the time. Kasahara says, and during the 5 a.m. shift change, there was this 15-minute window when no reports would come in, and that was the only time that Wada would sleep. Would cause yourself to go ill, right? Or sleep deprived. Yeah.
How do you survive? Because your body shuts you down. It's like because your body requires sleep. You get to a point where your body will be like, nope, and you'll just sleep.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know, like coffee drain pipe somewhere. You just keep
IV of caffeine or something. Yeah.
Harai says Wada joined in the final year of the 4-year development period, and honestly things became so much easier after that. Not that the workload or the hours decreased at all, but I could finally shift my focus to other tasks, so it felt like a huge sense of relief. Miyawaki says, I was part of the art team, and once our work was done, we were mostly out of the production process. So relatively early on, we finished our main tasks. After that, I got assigned to the debug team and ended up acting as a sort of debug lead. So just moved into another job. He started out as a manga artist, not even working for Sega, and now he's debugging the game. I remember frequently reporting bugs to Wada and the others, but the number of bugs was just insane. Wada says we'd have something like 300 bugs reported in a day, and we'd have to fix all 300 that same day.
Wow.
Miyawaki says eventually they told us stop bringing us bug reports. The more we looked, the more we found. It just never ended. Rai says that's not how it was supposed to be, and laughs. And then Wada says even with 300 bugs in a single day, most of them were event related, so the event team would take care of those. We focused on fixing the more critical game breaking bugs. And Miyawaki says there were a lot of silly bugs, like one where a woman at Yokosuka Harbour would suddenly do the splits and jump across the ocean at high speed.
I'd like to have seen that. That'd be quite funny.
There were some funny ones too, like where a button UI got stuck on Ryo's torso, making him look like a Power Rangers style superhero. During an event at the tattoo parlor where the American sailor says, "Give me something tough," this heroic looking Ryo shows up, causing the punks to freak out and run off in fear. They laugh. The dialogue for the scene played as intended, but Buggy Ryo looked the way he did made it pretty humorous. And then Wada says there was also one that came in as a bug report, though I'm not sure it should really be called a bug. It said, for some reason, former managing director Yukawa is in the bar. And I was like, come on, that can't be right. We didn't program that.
That's right. Logically speaking, if something hasn't been created, it wouldn't appear. And Wada says, that's what I thought too. But when we checked, Mr. Yukawa actually was there. One of the programmers had secretly slipped him in. Which I found quite... I'll take the next bit as well. He said, not really a bug, more like human error. And they all laughed. Harai said, the event team, man, they just did whatever they wanted. And then they laughed. We tried to squash as many bugs as we could. But Harai comes back to say, we're nearing the end of development, so things were so tight that we couldn't afford to be playing around. So Wada declared martial law. He was like, seriously, no more of that kind of stuff. cracking the whip. Also, this didn't make it to the final release, but a video was leaked from somewhere of a bug where Ryo took on Yusan's appearance. And there's the note from Switch here that says a full model of Yu Suzuki and Ryo's outfit can be found in one of the pre-release builds of Shenmue 2. And there's the link to the comprehensive details about the Game Jam build on the Sega Dreamcast info site. Go and check that out if you haven't done so already.
So that's probably like one of our videos, right? That they would have seen.
Yeah, possibly, yeah. During last year's PRS and Shenmue Dojo interview with Yu Suzuki, his reaction to mention of this discovery was to comment with a smile that it must have been someone's prank.
Yeah.
And then there's the image of that, which is cool there. Matsuda, oh yeah, that one, they all laughed. Wada said that was so funny. And they all laugh again. Matsuda says, outside of work hours, everyone totally got into creating that kind of joke data. So there's a bit of banter in the office, which does sound like, given how hard it was, they needed something like that.
Yeah, for sure. So Sega sounds like a pretty fun place to work, laughing. But setting aside the jokes, would you say that the huge number of bugs came down to the sheer scale of the game? Hirai says, in terms of the program, I think we actually had relatively few bugs. We tried to write the code carefully from the beginning to avoid bugs as much as possible. Kasahara says, honestly, it was like a miracle that the game ran. I think the real issue was that features kept getting tacked on far beyond what we had originally planned. Okuyasu says, normally debugging means that you fix a bug to get things working properly, but with Yusan, whenever we'd fix something, he'd use that moment as an opportunity to say, actually, I'd like to change this too, and just keep adding new ideas. Hirai says, there were also what we used to call B bugs and C bugs, minor bugs that you ideally want to fix but aren't critical, so they usually get pushed back, but with Shenmue, everything was treated the same. From Yusan's perspective, anything that wasn't working exactly as he imagined was a critical bug.
It's an interesting mindset though, isn't it, when you look at games now and the way they release and the states they release in. Get a bug-free experience, obviously driven very, very hard.
Yeah.
It's quite uncommon these days, but adding new ideas through the bug testing, I can imagine that went down like a lead balloon.
Yeah, but I mean, that's why Shenmue's so perfect, I guess.
Yeah.
Okuyasu says, we eventually had to step in and say, let's focus on debugging only, no more new ideas. What's great about Yusan is how he always takes things as far as they can go. So you got Okuyasu being a bit of a boss there. Kasahara says, I don't think the game would have been finished without Hirai. And Hirai says, I don't think it could have been done without Wada. Kasahara says, it was a miracle really that without the two of them, Shenmue wouldn't have been completed. Hirai says, the game came out at the end of December 1999, but I think there was still about 10,000 bugs left in November, just a month before release. 10,000, man.
Flipping heck.
Wada says, yeah, that's why Chapter 1 was ultimately delayed by about a month. There was just no way we could squash them all in time.
God, that's mad. 10,000 bugs a month out.
That's unheard of, isn't it? Because you've got to press the discs and everything as well.
Yeah. Wow.
Chaos.
Well, that was tight. Now that we've heard Mr. Wada's legendary story, Mr. Kashihara, could you share one of your own memories? And Kashihara comes back to say, AM2 had never made a home console game before. And to be honest, there wasn't even a proper planning team. Up to that point, we always had made games based on gut instinct. A programmer implemented something, Yusan would check it and say, let's change this part, and they'd refine it through trial and error. But Shenmue was an RPG, and you just can't make a game like that without planning documents or design specs. Still, for about the first year of the project, there was no one in charge of planning. When I got pulled into the Shenmue team, courtesy of the infamous Shenmue hunting, I wasn't even doing planning work. I was handling administrative tasks. All the while, I kept telling Mr. Okuyasu, we definitely need somebody for planning. Eventually, there was a shift in thinking, like, yeah, we really do need to do that, and we finally got an official planning section up and running. Okuyasu says, I don't really remember that. Kashihara said, you totally said, we don't need planners, we can make it without them, and they laugh.
It's mad that they remember exactly what people said.
That's insane.
Yeah.
It's probably because it's ingrained on them. Matsuda says, that definitely sounds like something he'd say, and Hirai says, yeah, I can hear him saying it, and they laugh about it again.
Yeah. So would you say that's part of the AM2 spirit? Okuyasu says, yeah, it was definitely part of the AM2 way of thinking. Kasahara, for games like Virtua Fighter or Virtua Racing, development was all about feel. You'd say, let's make this corner curve a bit more, or this part should be a nice straight where you want to hit the gas, and just tune it by instinct. That works for arcade games, but with an RPG, the gameplay progresses through a narrative, so you have to plan out what you're making in advance. You can't just wing it. So I wrote out something like, here's what we're going to try and do, and this is why we need a planning team. I explained it on paper and got people to understand and agree, and that's when I started to get involved as the planning director. Then Harai says I spent 4 years without ever receiving a spec document.
Jesus Christ. It's amazing it works. There it is, the legendary no spec document development environment. Kashihara said, hey, I did write them, I really did. And Harai said, I never got one for any of my programming work. There was never anything like program it like this. I always had to figure it out entirely on my own. He said, okay. Kashihara said, okay, yeah, we didn't write system specs. They laughed. Wada said, I never saw one either. Kashihara said, what we basically handed off were things like scenario outlines, situations, gameplay concepts, basically high-level overviews of events. And there's a note here from Switch, or I think from the article itself. Note on spec documents. In programming, whether for games or not, specification documents are like blueprints, are generally considered essential. That said, in the old days, there were plenty of dev teams who worked without them. Still, as the scale of development grows, so does the need for documentation. One can only imagine how difficult it must have been for Mr. Harai to program Shenmue without any specs at all.
Which is insane when you think of how D3T struggled on the remasters. And
well, if you haven't got any of it written down,
well,
etc.
That's true, yeah. I mean, did they have... I feel like I remember them saying something about some sort of manual design documents.
They did have documents. They had to translate them using Google Translate because they were all in Japanese as well.
Yeah.
I remember that was in I want to say PC Gamer interview back in the day when they were talking about how the project came to life and everything.
You were saying
else.
It was held together with string or something.
Basically rubber bands or something.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay, so new topic now. So turning ideas into reality. So listening to all of this, I can't help but wonder how you even managed to make the game. Akiyasu says it was a mess, a complete mess. Everyone laughs. Akiyasu says maybe there's a better way to say that. It was unconventional. There's no doubt that the development approach was completely off the rails. That goes for characters too. The main characters like Ryo were created by Miyawaki and Yusan working together, but most of the other characters were created entirely on the spot by the staff on the ground. And rather than starting from their backstories or profiles, they were created visually first. People just kept cranking out character models, and then Yusan would look at them and decide whether or not they'd actually appear in the game. Harai says it was all very ad hoc, more like putting out fires as we went. We had only been developing arcade games, so none of us really had any experience with large-scale titles for home consoles. We weren't following the kind of structured process where you start by building a big picture, identify the types of settings and assets you'll need, and then plan things out step by step. The project wasn't like that at all.
Wow. Okay, it sounds like the marathon-style approach, building it as you run. And Okuyasu says, when Yusan was checking character models, the ones with lots of facial detail, like elderly men and women with wrinkles, tended to pass his approval more easily. Probably because their faces had more information to them. So at one point, we ended up with a whole bunch of old people, and they all laughed. Masuda said, I often got told this character doesn't feel like they actually live in Yokosuka, and they laughed. But when it was good, he'd give you a simple yes. Miyawaki, standard-looking character designs just didn't click with Yusan. Unless the design was either unique or super unique, he wouldn't say this is great. So for a while, we had nothing but eccentric characters.
Interesting.
Okay, which some of them you do look at and go, okay, they're a bit out there.
I mean, it helps actually to recognise every character in the game. Less so much in, like, say, Shenmue 2 or Shenmue 3, where obviously you've got the main characters that stand out, but a lot of the NPCs don't. Whereas in Shenmue 1, a lot of the NPCs still do stand out as quite unique looking. They've got their own personality type of thing, so I can see that.
Yeah, I can. Okuyasu said you couldn't move forward without Yusan's approval, so everyone started making more and more extreme characters just to get past. It became a bit of a problem. Kashihara said the same thing with the background environments. You couldn't get a green light unless the streets looked dirty. Clean environments wouldn't fly. There had to be trash on the ground or stains on the walls. That's why the townspeople in Shenmue are generally townscapes in Shenmue are kind of grimy, and it does have that sort of grimy grey look, doesn't it?
It does, and that's kind of actually why I preferred the original game back in the day. I love like the sort of dungy, kind of grimy grey, the greyness of everything. It wasn't quite bright and colourful. Obviously, you had the blue skies in the daytime, but Shenmue had this sort of rugged feel that was new to me at the time. And Shenmue 2 actually kind of went the opposite, and it was like quite bright, I found, especially on Xbox, original Xbox. The colours were bumped up. and it almost seemed a little bit more cartoony, where the first game felt a lot more grounded in realism, at least on the way that the environments looked. It looked like a typical walk outside and you've got a grey pavement rather than like a colourful red bricked house or something in front of you that you see in Shenmue 2 at the harbour there. But so the dark stains on the concrete walls and such are really well done. So Matsuda says, from a graphics standpoint, things like wrinkles or dirty walls naturally give you more visual information in a single image. For example, it's easy to recognise a wrinkled old woman's face as having detail than a smooth young girl's. A pretty clean face might actually feel a little lacking in depth. I think that's why he started feeling like those types of designs were a bit lacking. So as you said, we naturally ended up with more and more elderly characters. Okuyasu says, and then one day Yusan says, hey, aren't there a lot of old people in the game? And Arai says, he's the one who picked them, and laughs. From a programmer's perspective, though, one of the toughest parts was how every character had a completely unique appearance and build.
Yes, and this then gets expanded on here. Those unique textures are really great, though, they say. And Arai comes back to say, there are hardly any reused assets in the game. Everything had to be rendered individually. That pushed memory availability, even just for something like a single wrinkle. We had a system called Magic Weather that handled snow and rain dynamically based on time and weather conditions. Yusan kept asking for more and more snow on the screen. The more snow we rendered, the heavier the processing load got. I'd say if we add any more, it's going to get too slow, and the response would be, then make it faster.
God.
With the rain too, it wasn't just simple falling raindrops. When the rain hit the ground, it would splash. Effects like that were added. And of course, they added even more processing load. Honestly, toward the end of development, all I remember doing was optimization work to lighten the processing load. And it generally is quite well optimized. I know it slows down in parts on the Dreamcast, but it's pretty well optimized given the hardware at the time. Okuyasu comes back and says, so while the process itself was completely chaotic, the goal was always clear, to realise Yusan's ideas. That gave the project a very distinctive development style. Speaking of the weather, I was shocked when he said, let's recreate the actual weather in Yokosuka from back then. And Kashihara said, yeah, it wasn't just a random rain or snow. We actually got access to historical weather data from 1987 and used it in the game. Okuyasu said, I remember when Kashihara came to me and asked, Yusan wants to use the real 1987 weather for Yokosuka. Where can I get that kind of data? I had no idea. Which I'm fair.
Yeah.
It's not like the internet was there at the time with all this reams of data on it.
Yeah.
You'd have had to have probably phoned them up and asked for it.
Yeah.
Kashihara, we also had the idea of using actual Yokosuka phone numbers. You couldn't just get one unless you actually lived there. So we tracked down Sega employees who lived there. We ended up asking someone from another department outside of AM2 and managed to get a few real Yokosuka numbers. And we all know what happened there.
Yeah, so what did you plan to do with those real phone numbers? Kasahara says those numbers actually appear in the game, and if you dial them in real life, the phone will ring but nothing happens. The original idea was to have something actually happen when you called. So there's a note from Switch here, and there was a cautionary warning to avoid dialing the wrong number. So I think a lot of people were typing in some of these numbers that didn't actually link to anywhere, but accidentally missing one of the numbers. So because they were quite realistic, one number change would have actually phoned an actual resident. So obviously they were being told not to phone the numbers to avoid that happening.
Mad.
Yeah.
Like a Licker-chan phone line, you know, the one kids could call to hear a recorded message. There's a note from Switch. A Licker-chan is a Japanese equivalent of a Barbie doll. There you go, learned something. There's an image there of one as well. Kashihara, exactly. The idea was to create something similar to the old Dial Q2 service, where, for example, you could give Weezan's password over the phone and trigger a response. There's a note from Switch here.
Would have been cool, wouldn't it?
That would have been brilliant. Dial Q2 was the name of a premium rate telephone information entertainment hotline that was popular in the 90s. Okay. It said, hooray, speaking of phones, that reminds me, the processing for the rotary phone call was incredibly difficult. You know what I mean, right? Not just a straight cord, but the coil cord that kind of stretches and contracts.
My nan used to have one of them.
Yeah, we had one as well.
Black rotary phone with a spiral cord.
Yeah, and move back and forward with it because it expand and contract. God.
I kind of wish I'd grabbed it now because it's kind of very Shenmue essence. Oh, right, like a spring. And Harai says, rendering that springy coil cord, stretching and compressing was a huge task. I spent an insane amount of time just making that work. And then in the actual game, the amount of time it's on screen, just a split second, he laughs. You were pretty proud of that back then, says Okuyasu. And Harai says that the program is physically accurate, you know. It really behaves the way it would in real life. Sadly, it barely got used in Shenmue 1, but in Shenmue 2, it ended up being used for the scene where Ryo and Ren are handcuffed together. The chain between the handcuffs used the same code. That's interesting.
So they did reuse something then.
Okuyasu says, looking back now, I do wonder if recreating things like historical weather data and using real phone numbers or getting the behaviour of telephone cords exactly right was really necessary.
So then the Famitsu person comes back and says, yes, as a Shenmue fan, that's exactly the kind of energy we love. The immense effort put into things that have nothing to do with the main story. Like having a kokotatsu table in the living room with the Mandarin oranges sitting on it and being able to pick one up, rotate it and look at it. That's totally unnecessary to the core game, but because you can do it, Shenmue feels different from anything else. That's what makes it so special. Okuyasu comes back and says, at the time we were thinking, if we're going to spend energy on that, wouldn't it be better just to make one more quest with a bit of a wry smile? But in the end, those obsessive details are what created the fan base. That's something I've only come to realise in hindsight. Wada comes back to say, I was the one who created the object interaction system. At first, when they asked me to make it so the player could pick things up and hold things, I thought it just meant picking up an anime and me making a picking up animation. But it wasn't that. They wanted a system where you could hold anything, which is mad.
It is mad. And you can grab anything. It's great. Wada says, so I thought, okay, I just need to make it so that each individual finger can move like a real human hand. I actually looked at my own hand as I was programming it. I remember actually we seen like some sort of motion cap on the fingers, right, at the hand.
And didn't we get a bunch of images of like different hand?
We did,
like,
and different fingers.
So we in the
related to that, yeah. It says, at first I figured as long as it looks like he's holding something, that's good enough. And I made a generic picking up system. But then one day, Yu-san picked up a teacup in the game, looked inside it and said that the fingers are clipping through the cup.
Oh dear. Oh dear. I was thinking, well then, just don't look inside.
And then they actually laugh and say, I mean, for progressing through the game, there's no need to pick up a teacup and look inside it. Wada-san says, exactly, but in the end I had to make the system flexible enough so that every item looked like it was being held correctly. I was thinking, there's no need to tilt it, you don't need to look inside the teacup, and laughing. Narai says, Wada took care of all those tiny details, every one of them.
Damn. And it comes back to the writer says, this is just my personal opinion, but I don't think being simple and efficient is always the correct answer when it comes to game development. Sometimes it's those weird places where you've clearly put in too much effort, where you think this might be pointless, but it's kind of fun, or this isn't cost effective, but creators clearly cared. Those extra touches, those indulgences in the system are what make a game charming. In a way, I think that's the essence of entertainment. After all, we're talking about a form of fun. It's not like building or using office software, but it's something else. Okuyasu says, but hearing you say that, maybe it means everything the development team went through back then was worth it.
And I would tend to agree with him. I think those are the most kind of beautiful charms that we can take away from like Shenmue 1, especially out the insane attention to detail and not just how they design the environments and the townscapes and the greys and whatever they used and the assets and textures, but these physical sort of tangible interactions you can have with the environments. You can open this type of door and it's a different type of door, it's a sliding door, or this has got like a handle that Ryo turns and pulls. It's like different doors, characters on set schedules and opening and closing shutters at certain times of the day. One time they're walking past with a bouquet of flowers in their hand, like they've just been shopping, or like we learned like the children come from school with a school bag back on the back. It's like these tiny attention to details that don't need to be in there, and someone's spent time working on those attention to detail things. That's what made Shenmue so great to me. That's what blew my mind, thinking that I can do anything, go anywhere. Like this was the first true open world game. It was all these little elements, these little details that made that experience more fulfilling. Characters opening umbrellas, for example, when it starts raining, it's just so natural, and that's how that sort of grounded in reality that we loved from that first Shenmue game. That's why I became a fan, actually, because of all these tiny, minuscule details that just added to the overall experience. I completely agree. I think everything that they worked on, whether it took them 24-hour working day and night and not sleeping and, you know, sitting there in a cigarette smoke-filled room, it was all worth it in the end.
It's when you look at this as well, like from a development standpoint, obviously open world games got bigger, didn't they? They got much, much bigger and wider in scope, but lost a lot of that intricate detail. If you look at open worlds now, they reuse a lot of the same assets. It's much more efficient the way they produce games now. It categorically is. But there's always been, and I've said this for a number of years. A lot of people have said this for a number of years. Those worlds are boring.
Yeah,
you sort of go around a lot of emptiness, do a quest, and carry on. Whereas Shenmue's world it felt lived in. Games that have done that, Red Dead 2's got a very good world in it. Some really nice detailing in it. Cyberpunk 2077, again, it's got a really good world with lots of things in it to do. It feels lived in, it feels alive. Not many games do that. Not many games try and do that. And there's this argument for expanding inwards within games, inwards in those little details, the things that just make it feel realistic, make it feel like something you can escape to, and eradicate that boring side of, wow, there's nothing here, there's nothing to do, the world's just green grass everywhere, yay. You know, there's something to be said for the amount of effort they went through back then. Now, and actually with the right efficiencies now in place, I think games could expand inwards and get close to that again. Whether they will is another question.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, like you say, these games these days, these modern games, they're fun to play, but how many of them are insanely memorable? Like, we're talking 26 years on, we're still talking about a game. There's not many games that you can still be talking about intricate details or maybe still finding something new from an experience that happened or was developed 26 years ago. And I think that's what ultimately makes Shenmue such a special game in our hearts, at least. So let's move straight into part 3. And obviously we're going to end at the end of this part 3 for today's show.
Yes.
But we're going to be looking at Hirai's Shenmue Maker, his programming concept. So were there any other parts of the programming that were especially difficult, is the question. And Hirai says, the game within a game. So at the U Arcade, this was pretty tough. He says you can play Space Harrier, Hang On, and so on inside the game. But to do that, we had to temporarily set aside the data from the main game, load and run the arcade game, and then after playing, return to the main game and deal with the fact that various internal data would come back completely scrambled. So getting everything to cleanly return to the way it was, as if nothing had happened, and seamlessly resume the main story, that was actually a pretty complex process. So it's not just like emulating a game, it's like moving code over here, bringing in this code, and, you know, vice versa.
Mental, isn't it, that they did that and somehow got it to work without being completely and utterly scrambled, I guess. But that doesn't, it's not like they just, it's almost like they have to park the code somewhere and go, right, don't forget that, and then play the mini game and then bring it back and hope it doesn't break. Which I think it kind of does, actually, a couple of times in the re-releases. I think you can get... There are some bugs, aren't there?
Some freezes sometimes if you play an arcade game. Sometimes I've had it freeze on me and force me to restart. So whether there's something leaking within that code in the remasters that wasn't there on the originals, but...
I think pre-patches as well, there were some definite bugs within the arcade games. Like some of the button functions wouldn't work properly or weren't assigned properly, and it was tough, to say the least. Anyway, I see comes back the right, which
typical
I always
Ryo.
find quite funny. Yeah, typical Ryo there. Karuka, here's a funny one. You know the capsule toy machines, right? Well, one of the items you can get is Sonic, but Sonic was the only one model with an unusually high polygon count. And during development, there was this bug where the game would crash whenever you got Sonic. Sonic is Sega's mascot, and we wanted to do him justice. So we modelled him with around 500,000 polygons. The data load was far too heavy, and it caused the game to freeze. Wow. Mad. Hirai came back and said, one of the hardest things wasn't even about the game development itself. It was figuring out how to create a program in a way that minimized human interaction. By the end, there were 88 programmers on the project, including myself. With that many people, communication became a major issue. I realised that if I didn't make it possible to write code without constant back and forth, my own work would never move forward. When I first joined the team for the first 6 months, I couldn't even touch someone else's code without asking them, what are the specs for this? This kind of setup just wasn't scalable, so I standardised the code base. Programming is normally all about freedom, but I intentionally removed that freedom. I turned you can do anything into you can't do anything, then rebuilt an environment where you can do anything within a structured environment and structured framework.
More intelligent than I am, some of these guys, man.
That's mad, isn't it?
Yeah. So that's starting to sound like a Zen riddle. Harai says, to put it more simply, think of it like Lego. When you look at a Lego model, you can tell which pieces were used to build it. I created those kind of building blocks and set up a code base that said you can't write code unless you use these commands. That way people could build events or scenes just by stacking blocks. So the idea was use these Lego blocks to build whatever you want. I handled all the management and debugging myself, so in other words, I built what you could call a kind of Shenmue maker, like our own RPG maker style system that allowed the team to create content freely within shared rules and standards.
Which I think now is probably very commonplace when you've got Unreal Engine, Unity, that they have plugins and things that set these things up for you, don't they? So they've built that internally. Now, lots of studios build their own engines and been building their own engines for years. I just wonder whether it was on that level of scale that Shenmue did it. That makes sense.
I know they actually sold or leased out the ability to use their engine, right? So it was like soft image. I remember we looked at that poster once that was like detailing the prices and whatnot it would be to sort of borrow the software to produce another game. And I'm not sure if any other game actually ended up using the Shenmue engine, but I think maybe this is what this is referring to, maybe?
Yeah, I do, because I think you're right, because it's... because it was intended for them to use the Shenmue engine as an engine to hire out to people to make their own games, which also would have recouped some of the costs of the development of Shenmue itself, which actually, in hindsight, is quite a clever thing to do. It's just unfortunate that it didn't really take off in the way that they'd have hoped, because actually, if you'd have had an engine like Unreal, which obviously did take off, you'd be making an absolute killing right now, and probably have made all the Shenmue games 65 times over, but there we go. So it says here, wow, so instead of having a totally free-form programming which would have spiraled out of control, we built a system with shared rules and standards that still allow for maximum creative freedom within those boundaries. Hooray, exactly. Everyone programmed the way we wanted, and the good parts naturally stayed while the bad ones fell away over time. By creating a system that united 87 other programmers, we no longer needed to communicate constantly. And that's what I think made it possible to actually realise an open world style RPG ahead of its time. And I would agree.
So this was essentially the game engine, right? Harai says yes, but more than just an engine. It was a communication free system built with the end goal already in mind. And Okuyasu says, Harai hasn't made a single complaint. He's just straight up bragging. Yeah, that's one thing we don't like, eh?
Yeah, I don't like bragging. Definitely don't brag.
And then there's a laugh, and then Harai comes back and says, well, I mean, I did make something special, or amazing rather, and laughs again. But honestly, I can't complain because Mr. Okuyasu and Mr. Kasahara were always there protecting the programmers and making sure we could work comfortably.
So it says, so Mr. Okuyasu and Mr. Kasahara were the breakwaters shielding the team. Harai, he says, thanks to those two of them protecting us, we had the time to properly focus on creating, and it's thanks to everyone that I made it. And then they all laugh again. And Okuyasu says, hey, and they're obviously having a bit of banter about all of that.
Oh, you can see the food now.
The food looks quite nice, actually.
It does, actually. Looks decent.
Big meal there, and there's a lot of beer there as well.
Like sharing a lot of dishes. I don't know. Maybe, I was going to say Chinese, but there's edamame there, so maybe typical Japanese cuisine, perhaps. And some alcohol. Nice. Yeah.
Looks very nice. Harai says, and Wada-san was amazing too. I don't think I could have worked properly without him.
Just noticed as well, Matt, the jacket hanging up at the back, isn't that in Shenmue 3?
Flippin' heck.
Isn't it?
It's very close, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm sure there's a jacket that looks like that.
Very close. Yeah, good spot, good eye. Okuyasu says, he joined the team and took on a leadership role straight away, right, even though he wasn't a full-time employee. Harai came back and says he was basically the number 2 guy. He came in during the final year 4, and within a month he was already handling the team's coordination at a fine level. The game was completed in 11 months after that. Without Wada-san, Shenmue would never have been finished. Wada said, well, I was just a contractor. And my contract literally said, get this finished. So it was my job to make sure it got done.
If you were working 3 times the normal hours and didn't go home for 2 months, even though you were only in the project for 1 year, it's like you actually worked for 3 years. And then Matsuda says, haha, yeah, that's pretty much what it comes down to. Wada-san just says, just to add, at the time I was also working at my own company, developing another game. God. When Shenmue wasn't too busy, I'd leave Sega, head back to my own company to work on the other title, and finally head home. Matsuda says, so you were working even more. Kuroka says, that's superhuman. Wada, honestly, this is just normal for me back then, so to tell the truth, I didn't really find Shenmue all that hard or exhausting. And then I says, no, it was exhausting, incredibly exhausting, and everyone laughs.
And then we now sort of move into the next section with countless stories about Yu Suzuki. And there's a nice picture of the mirror, Phoenix mirror there. So first says, you've already mentioned a few, but are there any particularly memorable episodes during development involving Yu-san? Okuyasu comes back and says, what was it he used to say? Kind of like a catchphrase. Wada goes, what, want me to say it? Okuyasu says, please. I said okay, but I didn't say go, right? And they go sort of have a realization moment, we'll have a bit of a laugh. He goes, Kashihara goes, oh yeah, that one. They all sort of clap together. Alright, says, totally, we all got hit with that at some point. And Kashihara says, whenever we go to build something, we'd present it to Yu-san like, would something like this be okay? And he'd say, okay, so go ahead and make it. And then once it was done, we showed it to him. He'd say, what is this? Why would you make something like this? And reject it. Right, naturally we'd push back and say, but you said okay when we showed it to you last week. Kashihara says, and then Yu-san would say, I said okay, but I didn't say go. God.
They laugh.
Yeah, so they all laugh. And Harai says, after that, every week it turned into this 2-step confirmation process. Yu-san, is this okay? Yeah, it's okay. Is that an okay to go? It's a go. And they all laugh.
What are they on about?
We'd be thinking, what even is this conversation? And Harai said, that line really became legendary. And Kuroka says, so nostalgic. And they laugh again. I remember how crushed people looked after getting hit with it.
Wow. So this happened to a lot of people. And I says, I didn't personally get told that myself, but I saw it happen plenty of times. And Kasahara, I think most of us heard it at least once. Okuyasu says, to be honest, I think Yu-san just forgot he had given the okay and was too embarrassed to admit it, so he tried to cover it up. Kasahara says, another thing that really sticks out with me was the Zushi Marina retreat. And Okuyasu says, oh yeah, that happened. Kasahara says, back then, Yu-san had a house in Zushi, a seaside location south of Tokyo. So we gather every week at a place called Zushi Marina for what were basically planning retreats. He'd invite people from all sorts of industries to talk, discuss ideas and brainstorm, and by the end of each session we'd be drinking wine together. It was completely unconventional. And we actually went to Zushi the other day actually, so
oh yeah,
we eventually at one point we'll probably head over to the Zushi Marina and try and figure out where these planning retreats took place.
That's mad, isn't it?
Yeah.
It says, as it happens, we've received a 25th anniversary comment from Yu Suzuki himself. And it's actually about his memories of the Zushi Marina retreats. Let's share that now. So here is the comment from Yu Suzuki himself. And he says here, what left the strongest impression on me were the weekly retreat meetings we held every weekend at Zushi Marina. In order to incorporate a wide range of perspective from other industries, we carried out one-night closed-door meetings every weekend. We gathered a diverse group of people, film, directors, novelists, composers, and professionals from the movie and video industries to exchange ideas and search for what a completely new form of game would be. Since everyone had different languages and senses of perception, we began a night stay over at Zushi Marina, having meals, soaking in the hot springs, and then sharing an overview of Shenmue to deepen our sense of camaraderie. At first, everyone was cautious and didn't talk much, so eventually we started serving drinks after 9 PM to help ease everyone into conversation. It really was a form of team building through naked honesty. Some people who weren't night owls would go to bed early, while others stayed up past 3 AM in heated debate. There were also those who shared their best ideas after a few drinks, so we made a rule. If drinking helps, then go ahead and drink. That rule proved extremely effective. Nice. I love it. I want to thank everybody who was involved in Shenmue. I especially appreciate the members of the planning team who handled all the preparation for the weekend Zushi Marina meetings every week without fail. It must have been tough.
That's a nice message, actually.
It is a nice message.
Thinking back, I feel like I get a sense that Yu Suzuki's kind of chilled out over the years. He's kind of got maybe nicer. He sounds like he was quite a harsh guy back in the day, maybe bossy, like your typical kind of manager or something, I guess.
Driven by what he wanted and his standards and unwavering standards, and I do think that probably exists now, maybe to a lesser extent, and we've seen that in some of the background footage to Shenmue 3. I think in A Gamer's Journey they've got that little clip where someone's, I think, working on, is it Shilling, the Shrine Maiden, and like her hair's not quite right, and Yusan's like telling this programmer or artist to change the hair ever so slightly.
Right.
They're clearly that exists still. I just wonder if over time it's mellowed out a little bit as well, and I think he probably looks back at it a little bit going, he was tough on people, I think, to a point maybe had to be, but you also look back at those times as slightly different as well, I guess.
So it says that was Mr. Suzuki's message, and Okuyasa says, Kasahara, it's okay to cry. Kasahara says, what kind of emotion am I supposed to cry from? He laughs. There were so many people attending those retreats, so if we didn't have enough wine or snacks, I'd have to run out and buy them. If someone wasn't feeling well, I'd go buy medicine. Even though I never lived in Zushi, I ended up knowing where pretty much every store was. Laughs again. There was even a time where we had a 5-day retreat lasting from Christmas through to New Year's Eve. And I remember on New Year's Eve, after the retreat was over, Miyawaki and I were sitting at Dai Koku Pier in Yokohama, eating rice bowl dishes and asking ourselves, what have we even been doing out in Zushi? Miyawaki laughs. Akiyasu says there are honestly so many funny stories from those Zushi retreats, like the time we were all working on the scenario together. It was already dawn and we were totally exhausted and totally drunk. We were trying to figure out how Ryo could be saved from a tough situation in the story, and Yusan suddenly said, how about this character comes to save him? For a moment, everyone was like, oh, that's a good idea. But then we thought it through and realised that during an earlier meeting that same day around 7 p.m, we had decided that that character dies. So we had to say, Yusan, we've already killed that guy off. I wonder who they're talking about.
I don't know. That's interesting, isn't it?
Because no one really dies, right? Apart from a WoW spoiler.
Yeah. Maybe it's a scenario for later on that didn't
Unless
make
they were
it.
going to kill Fukasan off or something. Or Goro. Drown Goro.
Drown Goro with the concrete boots. I'm sure some people wouldn't be too upset. I imagine all the hardship stories come out naturally, but were there any fun or light-hearted moments too? Harai says, well, Yusan used to say, someday this will all be something we can laugh about, so maybe that time has finally come. Okuyasu says, yeah, those painful memories turn into funny stories when you look back. Kashihara, going through all of that, I feel like I can pretty much handle anything now. Harai says there's another story that is kind of a laugh now, but I have some strong memories of the Shenmue premiere event we held in 1998 at the Pacifico in Yokohama.
Nice. And that is another place actually we went the other day. We actually went inside the Pacifico for the first time. They had like an event on, and I'll send you the footage actually, Matt, but they've got this awesome lit up, I guess artwork. It's not particularly artwork, but it's like this big glass sort of panel. And it's what you can actually see in the background during some of that premiere footage, that colourful blue and yellow colourful background thing. So we actually had a proper close look at that, and it's fantastic, to be honest. We want to go back, and when there's like a full event on where you can explore the whole Pacifico and try and look up the premiere footage and try and find those particular parts of the building, if you know what I mean.
Do you know what? I'd love some proper eye-def footage of that one day. It's
got to exist. We've got to get our hands on it. I'm going to infiltrate the Pacifico and go into the store cupboard and pull out the film
See
reel.
what's in there.
So Famitsu says, the big reveal, right? And Arai says, right. So that's when the title Shenmue was announced. The protagonist Ryo was introduced and the voice cast was revealed. But the game footage shown at the event was set in China, even though the first chapter of the game is set in Yokosuka. This is interesting, I think. Yeah. So at the time of the premiere, we hadn't made anything set in Japan yet. So that's interesting. So in 1998, according to Hiraiya, nothing had been made in Japan.
This is a year out from release.
Originally, it was Virtua Fighter RPG The Legend of Akira. So if Akira had remained the protagonist, starting in China would have been fine. But after the event, people said, wait, if our main character is Japanese, is the Japanese Ryo Hazuki, shouldn't the story start in Japan? That's when we realised we needed to build Yokosuka, and we ended up creating that entire setting within a year. Insane, right?
mad. I mean, you can see how this spiraled, can't you?
Well, you think, mate, it became its own game. So originally, I guess they must have had some sort of introductory cutscene, because we've seen that in the Saturn footage of Yokosuka, a little bit of Yokosuka, or at least. Well, actually, you do see some of it, because Ryo walks down and sees Guizhang in Sakuroka or Yamanose.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if Debuita's shown in the Saturn footage from memory. So maybe they didn't expand that far at that point.
Maybe not. Because it sort of, I guess it sounds like that the start of Shenmue was not a cobbled together, it's the wrong word, but they had like a little starting point, and then
Straight to China.
We've gone straight to China, whereas actually it expanded far, far beyond that, which is mad. It says, when you think about it, that's incredible. So you basically threw together the whole thing in just a year. And Okuyasu says, it brings back memories. We were really committed to having full voice acting, which was still rare at the time. That meant the amount of audio data was enormous. We calculated to figure how many discs it required. A new San came to me and said, Okuyasu, if we include everything, it's going to end up being 16 discs. Is 16 discs even acceptable for a game? And they all laughed. And I remember flat out telling him, absolutely not.
I just noticed a screenshot above, Matt, that does say, a note from Switch. The premiere did in fact include a brief clip of early Debuita Street with a Water Dragon store model shown to demonstrate the magic weather system. So whether this memory's a little bit hazy, or I'm not sure.
Maybe that was developed specifically for that bit,
beta,
and then they had used it and then went there.
Prototype type of thing.
So Harai says we spent a bit of time developing the Saturn version 2. I think we were exploring that direction for about 2.5 to 3 years. We even made places like Mao Village. Of course, Saturn specs were really limited, and eventually the decision was made to switch over to making it on Dreamcast. For the voice data, we had to lower the audio quality considerably to reduce the file size, and even then it barely fit. Out of 4 discs, 3 were game discs.
Reading that again, as he just said that Meow Village was in the Saturn build?
It does suggest it, doesn't it?
So we spent quite a bit of time developing the Saturn version 2. I think that we were exploring that direction for about 2.5 to 3 years. We even made places like Meow Village.
So it implies it, doesn't it?
Does imply it.
That it was there. That'd be interesting.
Yeah.
They had it in there.
It does go beyond the footage they showed in the video then. If that's the case.
Absolutely. So then you've got like the screenshot of the Saturn here. Obviously
added by Switch,
You got the Meow Village stuff again added by Switch, which for years, like at one point, people thought it was Bailu Village. Obviously, it's completely proven not to be later on.
I mean, you can understand that, but yeah.
Yeah.
Looks like Shenmue 3 locations.
I wouldn't surprise me, though, if they used some of that idea.
I agree, actually. Even the master guy there, I guess, could be someone that we actually did see in Shenmue 3.
It wouldn't be beyond the realms. It says, speaking of the discs, I'm reminded of the fact that Dreamcast used GD-ROMs back then. Developers were required to follow regulation where the disc had to spin briefly to read data, then stop, wait a certain amount of time before the next read. Shenmue was an exception. We used something called infinite mode, where the disc would spin continuously. That way, there was almost no need for seeking, and the loading times were much faster. I mean... Also wreck Dreamcasts.
Boom! It did, mate. Honestly, Shenmue was probably the reason I went through like 2 or 3 Dreamcasts with that restart thing, because this revelation that the disc was constantly spinning, the lasers being overworked, etc.
It's mad, isn't it? And I mean, the loading times on Shenmue were hard. Like, they're not, certainly by today's standards, but God, can you imagine what they could have been like? Harai then says, since the game constantly needed to load characters in the city while you were walking around, we kept the disc spinning continuously using the infinite mode, something that wasn't allowed for other companies. So it's possible that playing Shenmue caused more wear and tear on the Dreamcast hardware than other games. Wow. Your point, case in point.
Exactly.
When you played Shenmue, the GD-ROM would keep spinning at full speed the entire time.
And then they laugh. And Okuyasu says, by the way, did anyone here actually play Shenmue all the way through after it was released? I mean, I'd done so much of it during debugging and at the Zushi retreats that I felt like I didn't need to anymore. Rai says, I did. I played until I got the time over game ending, which is interesting because if you don't progress until the end, a note here from Switch, by the end of April the 15th, the game ends with the time over. But that's pretty much impossible to happen. In fact, I think it's 1987, not 88, but I'll mention that to him and he can correct that. Tiny mistake there.
Happens.
Akiasa says you were doing that for work though, and Harai says, well, yeah, I did do it for work too, but I also played through the retail version just to check. I already knew it could be finished normally, so I wanted to test whether you could also trigger the less common time over ending. I see, okay. So during development, we had a debug mode that let you fast forward the in-game time, but that's not in the retail version. So it was a real grind. Akiasa says, yeah, in the game, time progresses 1 day per real-time hour. Then Wada says, I don't know how he is now, but back then Yusan was incredibly serious about game development. He had zero tolerance for games, for jokes or goofing around.
And really, so Wada says, so if a programmer tried to sneak something in silly or playful, he absolutely wouldn't allow it. He'd get seriously mad. Back then, I was the only programmer on the team who could handle the physics for swaying 3D elements like hair or clothing movement. I programmed things like Shenhua's braid swinging naturally. When I first joined the team, I was in charge of the female character Niao-sun. She didn't make a proper appearance until Shenmue 3 though. She was designed to be a sexy character, and one of the designers, who clearly had a thing for that kind of thing, came to me and said, I've added bones to Niao-sun and Zhuing's chests, so the rest is over to you. In other words, they were requesting jiggle physics for their breasts. And there's a note, in 3D modelling, a bone is a movable part used to animate polygons. So I implemented it, but then Yusan found out, and I got a huge scolding from him. He yelled, it's not that kind of game, and got seriously angry. After that, Shenmue had a strict ban on the breast jiggle.
Is there no breast jiggle at all? Not even like Zhuing or Joy or... I don't think
I've
there is.
never paid much attention to it. I don't think there is. Matsada, oh yeah, I remember that, and they laugh. Speaking of getting chewed out, well, I can talk about it now after all this time, but here's a story involving the 4 guardian beasts that feature in Shenmue. There was a long meeting about naming them. One scenario writers proposed using their commonly known names: Zuzaku Juki, Vermilion Bird; Byaku Bayu, White Tiger; Genbu Juanu, Black Tortoise; and Seryu Qinglong, Azure Dragon. Yusan really liked them. He said those are great names and looked very pleased. I warned the writer, those names are already used in other games. That could be a problem. But later, Yusan was so happy with the names, he suggested we go out for drinks and ended up going along. And that is when disaster struck. He started telling the bar girl about guardian beasts, like, aren't these names awesome, Seryu, Suzaku? They're bosses in the games I'm making right now. And then the girl said, oh yeah, I know those names. They're in Persona.
Oh no.
And they all laughed. Oh dear. As soon as she said that, Yusan abruptly started gathering his things to leave. Just 10 minutes after we got to the bar, he was heading home in a taxi. The next morning, sure enough, I got called into his office and he was upset. And of course, I got blamed. The name proposals were scrapped and we had to come up with entirely new ones. I just remember thinking, yep, I knew this would happen. I was always the one pulling a short straw in situations like that. I immediately ran off to a Hanada library and started researching the 4 guardian beasts. And what I found out, the names like Seryu Suzaku had actually had even older versions. That's where Kanglong and Niao-sun came from, the ancient names. Once we pitched those, Yusan approved them, and we just barely managed to salvage the situation. I remember that clearly. And there's a note from Switch saying here, prior to the game's release, another change saw Kanglong renamed to Lan Di.
So even when things went wrong, they somehow worked out in the end. Misfortune turned into opportunity. And yeah, so that's the end of part 3 here. And just to pick up an interesting point, I guess, on those 4 Guardian Beast names. Obviously, the old names became Kanglong and Niao-sun, but has anyone actually looked up what the older names from that era would be for the Black Tortoise or the Snake Tortoise and the...
I haven't. I'm sure someone has.
Because obviously Baihu is in the game, but whether or not that's actually related to this White Tiger, not sure. And I think we've always considered as Genbu.
Just having a look. So you've got Baiyu, which is China. Jinbing, which is also White Tiger. Byaku, which we've already talked about. Beiko, which is Korean. Bakhao, which is in Vietnamese. Yes, okay.
Gentai, that's what I'm thinking of actually. So
yes,
do you reckon it was changed from Genbu to Gentai?
Must have been.
Not sure. And then like a Kotai as well.
Yes.
So I'm not sure where they come from because Vermilion Bird is Niao-sun. So the Suzaku, Jukyu, whatever, that's been named Niao-sun. And then the Azure Dragon is Lan Di. So that's Seryu, Qinglong, been changed to Kanglong, and ultimately Lan Di. So we got Lan Di and Niao-sun named, but the other 2 obviously we don't quite know who those are yet.
No.
But I feel like I've seen Genbu before.
I'm sure it's mentioned in Shenmue 3 in that article in Charlie's room.
Yeah, that's, or is that Gentai? It's either Gentai or Genbu.
I think it's Gentai.
Yeah. So that would kind of confirm that dude's name. And then depending on whether Baihu was Baihu, that would confirm the other leader there that's perhaps not an intentional leader anymore. I don't know. It depends on where the storyline's going. It's always been one of those clearly open to debate things.
Yeah, it's
and
been
where
there for a long
Zinning
time,
stands in that, and where Tentai stands in that. So all these leaders, and then there was also that one he reported on with us, which was like the
chief of operations,
or chief of staff or something. So who knows what they had planned? I mean, I wish we did know at this point, 26 years later, but hey ho, that's how things go. Shenmue gaming goes, I guess.
Yes.
But yeah, incredible article. I mean, what do you think of this article so far, Matt? We've read it a couple of times before in the past, like the original Japanese Google translated version and then Switch's version here. But still, actually, when you actually read it again in this format, you either remember a few things or you hone in on a couple of missed things that we might not have spoken about.
Yeah, I think you do. I mean, Google Translate, as good as it is these days, you do lose an element of nuance with it, don't you? And I think that's exactly where that's come in here a little bit. There's certainly more nuance to the stories and things that have gone on. I do remember a lot of it, which is great, but also at the same time, I think there's much more to come from this. But it's very, very interesting. And they sound like they went through a massive cycle of development here. It's amazing the game even works.
Yeah, it's true, actually. When you come to realise the amount of effort that went into it and some of the trials and tribulations along the way, it is an insane achievement, I guess, that we even got a Shenmue 2 out of this. So they developed and released a Shenmue 1 and then continue to work actually on Shenmue 2 even beyond that. So insane. Obviously, like Okuyasu said or whatever, it was all worth it in the end. But yeah, so we're going to leave it there, guys. So obviously next episode, we're going to continue with part 4, part 5, and part 6. That is available, like I say, right now to read on phantomriverstone.com. So if you want to skip ahead and read the text version, then feel free, go ahead. But obviously we are going to cover that next episode. And actually this is where we get into some juicy stuff about the PS2 and some of the history involved there, and actually some of the staff members' feelings about a potential Shenmue 4 is actually very, very interesting. But yeah, we're going to leave it there, Matt. Do you want to close us out with your Season 6 spiel? I don't know if you've changed it or not.
Spiel, which I definitely have not changed because I haven't got round to changing it yet, if that makes sense.
Does it need changing? Probably not.
Well, probably not. Obviously, we're now into early part of the year. Hashtag Let's Get Shenmue 4 has been trending, which will be for nearly 2 years. We're pushing harder. I think people have probably noticed that the messaging is probably a little bit more aggressive, assertive, whatever way you want to look at it. I'm taking the stance this year that I'm not going to take any crap. We need Shenmue 4 and we needed to get it made. And if it means that I rub some people up the wrong way in doing it, so be it.
What do we want?
Shenmue 4. When do we want it now?
Yeah.
5 years ago, damn it. But I'm taking more of an assertive approach with things and not being as well. Polite's probably the wrong word. I'm just being a bit more pushy with things this year, and things like the surveys and getting the data over and to people who need to see it and all the rest of it. Because I think it's going to take something like that to move us forward as much as we can.
Like enough.
But thank you.
Enough.
Yeah, like if we don't push now, we don't get it now. I don't know when we'll struggle. We might struggle. Obviously, Shenmue 3 Enhanced is going to come out at some point this year, and I keep saying it. We absolutely must back that as much as we absolutely can. If that game is a success, now obviously I don't know what success will look like for it, but if it makes enough money, people come back to the table, and we're then definitely into an interesting situation with the Shenmue 4. But thank you to the Shenmue community who come out month after month, day after day, supporting the dojo, supporting the cause, and supporting everything else around the hashtag Let's Get Shenmue 4, with the next tweet-a-thon on the 4th of February. If you haven't been there already, it might be the 4th of March, depending on when we air this. However, if you want to find out where we are up to all our wheelings and dealings and content and everything else, First and foremost, you can find us on shenmuedojo.com. That is the website. We also have the forums, which is just shenmuedojo.com/forums. If you are more into your social media type of things, then you can find us on X, Shenmue_Dojo, Facebook, Shenmue Dojo, Instagram, Shenmue_Dojo, Blue Sky, you can find us at shenmuedojo.com. I think we're on Threads as Shenmue Dojo, TikTok, Shenmue Dojo, Twitch, shenmuedojo.tv. You can find our weekly video content, updates, news, views, all those bits and pieces, streams and everything else is also on YouTube, which is youtube.com/Shenmue Dojo VOD. And if you want live in the action chat in the Discord, where we seemingly talk about hair and not a lot else, you can find us on Discord. The link will be in the YouTube description below, and we definitely don't brag about it.
No, we don't, Matt. So thank you very much, guys, for continuing to support the podcast. We're here a few episodes on from our 100th episode, which is insane to even think that we've achieved that number. And now we're in the 6th season, in 2026. Things, I'm fucking up here, but are only going to get better. So maybe they're not. After that little bad outro that I was trying to work myself towards. But again, thanks so much, guys. I guess we'll see you when we next see you.
Yes, we will. But take it easy, guys. Thank you very much.
God. See you later, guys.
Look at the time.